Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all our fans, friends, and family joining us throughout the world as we bring you live coverage of tonight's 2015 total lunar eclipse, otherwise affectionately known by us by our hashtag #SuperBloodMoon. My name is Christopher Blair. I work here at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, and on behalf of NASA, all our production, news, and media support crew working very diligently behind the scenes to bring you this live coverage. Let me be the first to thank each and every one of you for joining us as we bring you live coverage, several hours of lunar-themed content, and all the lunar news that you can use. And so I am joined by one of my colleagues, cohorts, and basically an astronomy webcast partner in crime, who I will let introduce herself. If you would, please tell our audience your name, title, and your responsibilities here at NASA Marshall.
My name is Mitzi Adams, and my official title is astrophysicist, but what I actually do is solar physics. I study the sun, and I also do a lot of education outreach, and I've done quite a few of these web and TV events.
Oh, yes, you have, absolutely. In fact, this is our second one, and once again,
Together,
yes, our second one together. And maybe even our third. I think I might have worked behind the scenes on another one that you had done previously when I first came here to NASA Marshall, and it's a treat to have you. I'm very pleased, as is everybody here working tonight. Your expertise and your enthusiasm really shines and shows through, and so we appreciate you joining us tonight and look forward to all your content and everything you can share with us.
Thank you, Chris.
So we've, as always, have a lot of content we want to share throughout the broadcast. So one is we will have hopefully some live feeds. I know you've worked very diligently. Very hard to get some live feeds all across the country that we can get that we can see for tonight's lunar eclipse. And so some of those facilities that you've worked with, can you give us the name of some of them?
Fernbank Science Center in Atlanta, Georgia, Austin Peay University in Clarksville, Tennessee, and the Lafayette Science Museum in Lafayette, Louisiana, and the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Thank you very much. Griffith Observatory, of course, Los Angeles, and hopefully also Adler in Chicago.
Yes, absolutely. That's a lot. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to get that one is because it's great to see different perspectives. This is a global event, at least for half of our globe, and so trying to get a time frame and timestamp and different central time zone, mountain time zone, but also hopefully we're trying to fight the weather, but I don't think that's working as well as we had planned.
No, unfortunately it's not, and you're right, this is kind of half the globe, and for the first time we have Canada, the United States, Central America, and South America involved, and for the first time this evening we actually have some help here from some translators who can speak Spanish and Portuguese.
That's going to come in very handy later on, I'm pretty sure. Spoiler alert, if you will. And so, so not only the live feeds we'll get to throughout the night, and as Mitzi mentioned, we might have cloud issues, and so we'll take them as often as we can. But as anyone who's followed along with NASA content knows, we definitely encourage audience participation as much as possible. And so one thing you're going to get tonight is we have several guests that are joining us throughout the world. We're going to call in tonight several guests who can give us lunar experts and astronomy experts and scientists. So a quick rundown, who are some of the people or what are some of their expertise of some of our guests tonight calling in?
One of the greatest things I think we have is we're going to have an interview with Fred Espenak, who a lot of people know as Mr. Eclipse, and with Professor Jay Pasakoff, who has been an eclipse chaser for quite a few years now. And we have a special guest from Guatemala, from Galileo University there in Guatemala City, and many, many others.
No, that's a lot. So that kind of spans, once again, it's not just guests here in our country. So we're excited about that. And as always, NASA is encouraging and promoting as much digital, online, social media engagement as we can. And tonight is no exception. And so we want you at home, the viewers, to be involved. One thing you could do is you could participate in our tweet chat. If you've got a question about tonight's total lunar eclipse, you can join our online digital conversation using a Twitter account. If you don't have one, they're free. You can create one really quickly. And you can send your questions, you can tweet your questions to us at NASA_Marshall. At NASA_Marshall is our Twitter account. You send your questions. We've got guest experts working behind the scenes here in our social media conference room. We're going to answer your questions all night tonight. And the ones we can't get answered tonight, we'll take the time throughout the rest of the week to answer as many as possible. We obviously get a lot of questions, and we answer as many as we can. One thing I would encourage you is to take the time to see which questions have been asked already. And if your question has already been asked, provide another one because that really gives us a good database of questions, because we'll use these. In fact, some of our answers that we're providing tonight are from previous
eclipses.
Yeah, absolutely. So we put your answers and your questions to use. And so not only the tweet chat is important tonight, we definitely encourage you to be involved in that, but something new as well, and that's our photo contest for tonight. And so if you're lucky
contest.
Yeah, it's a photo contest. And so I don't know if I'll get to participate. Or if we'll get to participate. But if you get a chance to take a photo of the eclipse tonight, what you can do is upload that for our photo contest. You can go to the NASA Marshall Facebook page, and on that Facebook page, our top post is pinned to the top. It has a link, and you can go and submit a photo. Now, this won't start until 10 o'clock Eastern time, when you can start submitting photos. And it's one photo per user. You upload that photo, and then we will actually go through and select the best photos. That's one of the tasks we will do in the next couple days. And then we'll put them all in the gallery, and we're going to let the audience go through and pick which ones they like the best.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty fun. So a lot of chances for people to submit, once again, one photo. So a photo contest, a tweet chat. We got guests joining us via telephone. We've got live feeds. We've got Mitzi, and so another jam-packed.
We've got Chris.
Yes, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And definitely another jam-packed event to share with everyone. So thank you for joining us. And so we'll keep on going. One thing we're going to do is get a chance to explain what is a lunar eclipse. And so we've got a video prepared that we've been using to show people a good animation of exactly what is happening for tonight's very rare, very historic lunar eclipse. And so we'll toss that video right now and be back in just one moment.
Total Eclipse of the Harvest Moon, presented by Science at NASA. In the days before light bulbs, farmers relied on moonlight to help them harvest their crops. Many crops ripen all at once in late summer and early autumn, so farmers found themselves extremely busy at this time of year. They had to work after sundown. Moonlight became an essential part of farming, and thus the harvest moon was born. According to folklore, the harvest moon is the full moon that falls closest to the autumnal equinox, the hectic beginning of northern autumn. In 2015, the moon is full on September 28th, less than a week after the equinox of September 23rd. The coincidence sets the stage for a nice display of harvest moonlight. But wait, this year's harvest moon is not like the others. It's going to be eclipsed. On the night of September 27th and into the early hours of September 28th, the full moon will glide through the shadow of Earth, turning the harvest moon a golden red color akin to autumn leaves. The action begins at 9:07 p.m. Eastern Time on the evening of September 27th, when the edge of the moon first enters the amber core of Earth's shadow. For the next 3 hours and 18 minutes, Earth's shadow will move across the lunar disk. Totality begins at 10:11 p.m. Eastern Time. That's when the moon is completely enveloped by the shadow of our planet. Totality lasts for an hour and 12 minutes, so there is plenty of time to soak up the suddenly red moonlight. The reason the moon turns red may be found on the surface of the moon itself. Using your imagination, fly to the moon and stand inside a dusty lunar crater. Look up. Overhead hangs Earth, night side facing you, completely hiding the sun behind it. The eclipse is underway. You might suppose that the Earth overhead would be completely dark. After all, you're looking at the night side of our planet. Instead, something amazing happens. When the sun is located directly behind Earth, the rim of the planet seems to catch fire. The darkened terrestrial disk is ringed by every sunrise and every sunset in the world, all at once. This light filters into the heart of Earth's shadow, suffusing it with a coppery glow. Back on Earth, the shadowed moon becomes a great red orb. One more thing. The full moon of September 28th occurs near the perigee of the moon's orbit. That is, the point closest to Earth. This makes the harvest moon a supermoon. The super harvest moon eclipse will be visible from the Americas, Europe, and Africa. It brings an end to a remarkable series of 4 consecutive total lunar eclipses visible from North America, a so-called tetrad. Perhaps the heavens have saved the best for last. If you live in the eclipse zone, mark your calendar for September 27th to 28th and enjoy the show. For more beautiful sights in the night sky, stay tuned to science.nasa.gov.
Welcome back to our live coverage here from NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. As we're streaming tonight's total lunar eclipse, at least we're efforting to stream tonight's total lunar eclipse. And my colleague Mitzi Adams is with us tonight. Mitzi, exactly what are we seeing in tonight's live feed?
Well, this is interesting. It's Lafayette, Louisiana. We're seeing the lovely clouds around their science museum there, where they were attempting to have an event for the general public and for some students to teach them a little bit about astronomy and eclipses and the moon. And it looks like it's going to be a little difficult this evening.
Now, they're still having their event, though. You've been on the phone with them all night tonight, and I've heard once or twice from them. And so weather isn't always going to slow these things down, so it may slow down what they're using with the telescope, but I think they have a lot of activities online. Yes,
they do. And in any science museum, you can always look at the things that are in the museum itself. You can look at the telescopes. There are definitely different types of telescopes that you can look at and try to find out how they work. Is it a reflecting telescope? Is it a refracting telescope? And what advantages are there in viewing an eclipse or not? You can learn about science, the science of astronomy. You can learn about botany. You can learn about all kinds of different things at a science museum.
Absolutely. And so the Lafayette Science Museum, and then our guest joining us later is the director of the planetarium. Is that the correct title?
I believe his title is curator.
Curator, actually, I believe that is right. So once again, you've got the museum, you've got the planetarium, and when we get a chance to talk to them later, we'll hear some of the different activities that they're involved with. And so while we wait for our first guest, now's a great chance for Mitzi to give us a rundown of exactly what we're seeing tonight, or what people and our viewers can expect to see if the clouds clear for tonight's lunar eclipse, especially this rare event. And so give us a little idea of how this works and why this is such a treat for everybody.
Well, it is a treat because we have a series of 4 eclipses that are spaced relatively 6 months apart. And for us in this area of the country, it's a treat because we don't have to get up at 2 a.m. to view the eclipse. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have clouds again for the 4th time in Huntsville. However, eclipses are not that rare, and even these tetrads are not that rare. This one is kind of exciting because it's exciting to astronomers anyway, because it's happening when the moon is at perigee. And that means that the moon is in the closest part of its orbit to Earth. And it is actually closer, it's physically closer at this time, but if you go outside and look at it, because it's closer, it ought to look bigger, but you probably won't notice any difference. If you were to take a photograph of the moon tonight and compare it with the moon in 6 months, you might notice a difference at that time. But it's very, very difficult to tell a difference just by looking at it one night or the other. Right,
and so it's, like I said, the apogee, perigee, and so at this distance in perigee, it is a little closer. And I think 14% was the...
14% and probably about 30% brighter. But, you know, there could be 30% variation in the transparency of the Earth's atmosphere. So it's really difficult to see a big difference with your eyes. You have to measure it.
Well, and it could be 100% chance of cloudy.
Yes.
But at 14%, so the moon is a little closer, apogee and perigee, and as you can see, we showed that animation, or at least that still, and that the lunar orbit around Earth is a bit of an elliptical. It's not a perfect circle. That's why sometimes it's a little closer and a little farther away. And so at 14%, as you said, you may not be able to tell much with your eyes, but 14% is pretty significant. I mean, if I got a 14% pay raise, I'd be pretty happy.
Oh, me too.
If they cut my taxes by 14%, I would jump over the moon, eclipse or not. And so, but if you get, once again, a great segue into taking those photos tonight, because we're having our photo contest going on where you can submit your photos. If you go to our NASA Marshall Facebook page, you can submit your photos, 1 per user later on tonight, of hopefully you'll get a chance of the lunar eclipse. And so if you get that, you can upload that, and that's a great another opportunity, because we're going to let our fans vote on that. And so 14% for being a little closer. I think that's interesting, and so that's one thing. And we've also heard a lot about the term supermoon. And so as we're waiting and getting our guests ready, and so I think our guests will probably have a lot about this. And so let's get our first guest online right now. Hello, sir. Are you there, and can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here, and this is Ed. I'm here with my colleague April Witt at Fernbank Science Center.
Thank you for joining us, Ed and April. We really appreciate that. I hope you have good weather there, and I know Mitzi is definitely excited to have you joining us tonight.
Well, actually, we're socked in with clouds tonight. We cannot see anything but clouds. However, we do have a live feed from the observatory where you can see our telescope, which is currently looking at the dome or clouds.
Well, Ed, you are an educator at Fernbank Science Center in Atlanta, which is a part of the DeKalb County school system. And the school system itself has been around since the late 60s. And I believe that the planetarium at the time it was built and the observatory were the largest in the Southeast. But the Fernbank Science Center's observatory has kind of an interesting history because during the Apollo missions, Apollo 11, 12, and 13, there was a state-of-the-art image intensifier that was attached to that 36-inch telescope that was actually able to visually see the Apollo spacecraft en route between Earth and Moon. And this was significant, especially during the Apollo 13 mission, because the Fernbank telescope was able to see the remnants of the air that was around the spacecraft after the explosion. And it was kind of interesting because there was a possibility that that might have been the last view that we would have had of that spacecraft and the astronauts at the time. Do you recall any stories of that event in that historic Fernbank Science Center Observatory?
Well, that's a good point, Mitzi. I actually came on board here in 1988, so I've been here for a while, but my tenure here at the Science Center doesn't go back that far. However, I did cross over with the original astronomers who were here since 1967, and I recall them telling stories about tracking the Apollo missions with the 0.9 meter or 36-inch telescope that we have in our observatory, which hopefully you're getting an image of now.
Yes,
but
we see
I
it.
think, as you had mentioned with the image intensifier,
it's different.
That for the time, that was state-of-the-art. And in fact, one of the astronomers had showed me an article in Sky and Telescope magazine. I can't quite remember exactly what issue, but there are pictures, I believe, of the gases, the oxygen gas that was leaking out of the service module on Apollo 13.
I was there.
Oh, you were here at the time, right, Mitzi?
Yes, I was.
Okay, cool. And I believe it was John Burgess and Rick Williman, two of your former colleagues that were up in the observatory. And I remember John describing it and having media up there, national media up in the observatory as well.
So at that time, there was a lot of interest in the moon and in NASA's trips to the moon. But what first drew you to astronomy, and what is special to you about this eclipse?
Well, it's kind of funny that you should mention that, because it really was the moon that drew me to astronomy. As a kid growing up in the 60s, I had a neighbor who, he was older than me, he was a teenager, and he was following the Apollo missions, and he was actually riding the Kennedy Space Center as well as the Marshall Space Flight Center. So I was able to sneak that address, can't remember if it was Kennedy or Marshall, and get with my mom. I was like 6 or 7 at the time, and she helped me put together a brief letter to NASA. And I said something to the effect of, "Dear sirs, can you send space stuff and lots of pictures. And they did. 2 weeks later, there was this big yellow envelope with a NASA meatball on it, and it was just packed with pictures that I put all over my my bedroom. So, you know, it really was the moon, missions, and eventually going out and looking at the moon. My background, as you know, is in planetary science, planetary geology. So, you know, just following NASA and the generosity of them sending me, especially the pictures and the NASA fact sheets, is what got me jump-started.
Do you have any students there actually waiting and hoping for a clear sky?
Well, right now it's Miss Witt and I, and we've been fielding phone calls. People have been calling in, but we did put a note up on our website that we have rain, a little bit of spitting rain outside, and that we're just really unable to see anything. And of course, you know, in the night sky, the moon is the brightest thing, and if that's not punching through, we know those clouds are pretty thick. So we've you know, been talking to people by phone and email and that sort of thing, just letting them know what's going on here in Atlanta with the clouds. However, we've been referring them to NASA TV and also the NASA channel to track the eclipse, to be able to follow the eclipse from, I guess you have a feed from Griffith Observatory a little later when the sun goes down out there, as well as Adler Planetarium in Chicago.
Yes, we're waiting for the Earth to move into the correct position so that we can get our incredibly fantastic feed from Griffith. But unfortunately, we can't hurry that along. So you are a planetary scientist, and so you're probably pretty familiar with lunar craters. Which crater on the moon might be your favorite, and why?
Well, you know, there are a lot of craters on the moon, and so it's hard to pick a favorite, but actually I do have one favorite crater, and it's hard to find unless the moon is full. It's in the southern cratered uplands of the moon. It's called Tycho, and that crater is almost 100 miles across. Now, when you're looking at the moon, and if it's at any phase but full, without a really good map, you'll never find that crater. However, when it's full, it's almost like a magic act. This particular crater comes into view. There are like these fingers that extend out from the crater that are called rays, and they extend for hundreds of miles, perhaps in some cases, you know, close to 1,000 miles away from the actual crater. And so it's kind of like a disappearing act. You know, when the moon's not full, you know, those rays vanish, but just when you have the full phase, the reflection of sunlight off of the impact ejecta, those rays are glassy bits of material, and they radiate out like spokes on a wheel away from Tycho, so it comes into view then. So that, anyway, Tycho is my favorite crater on the moon.
So if we had a lunar map and north was up, Tycho would be in the south. Is that correct?
Right, correct. And if you were looking at the moon through a telescope, because a telescope will invert the image, Tycho would be up at the top of the moon, but technically it's in the south, as you've mentioned, correct?
We actually have an image right now, and it is towards the bottom on the left side for those who are looking.
Awesome. So you can see it.
Yes, absolutely. Ed, quickly, what's the difference between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse?
What I may do, Mitzi, is I may let April, she came in today, April Witt, our other astronomer. She's actually the senior astronomer here. I'll let her field that one. So she'll well, she's having a ball here, but she'll field Trip Woodsworth is coming in tonight.
That's great. April is a little bit of a running buddy of mine. So are you still running, April?
Yes, ma'am. Walking these days.
So what is the difference between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse?
It has to do with where the moon is in its orbit around the Earth. It's the phases of the moon. Remember those that you learned when you're in 3rd grade with that little song? When the moon is between the Earth and the sun, that's new moon phase. We look up into the sky and we don't see the moon because the light side is toward the sun, away from us. The opposite is true at a full moon. Half a month later, the moon has moved along its orbit. It's now the Earth is now between the sun and the moon. So when the moon, full moon, moves through the shadow of the Earth, that's when you get a lunar eclipse. When the moon moves between the Earth and the sun at new moon phase, and if the geometry is right, everything's lined up, the shadow of the moon falls on the Earth. The penumbral shadow, that kind of dim ring around the shadow, the dark shadow of the moon, the umbra part, everybody across the Earth, well, the sky is clear, can see the lunar eclipse. That's pretty easy to see. A solar eclipse is a little trickier because the shadow falls at one narrow spot on the Earth, and if you're within that center line, you get to see the dark, like a black hole in the sky almost, it looks like, as the moon is covering up the sun. For us here in the southeast, the next good one is in 2017. August 21st is the next. Actually, it's a total solar eclipse. There hasn't been one all across the continent of the United States in a long time.
That's fantastic. Yes.
Absolutely. We really appreciate it, April, and Dr. Ed Albin, who's been joining us from the Fernbank Science Center, just outside of Atlanta. That's one of our first guests for the night, many that we have to come.
Just 6 miles outside of Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, that's right there. And so we want to wish them good weather. Hopefully they'll get another chance a better chance later tonight. And we'll take their feed going out throughout the night, especially if it gets any better. So once again, thanks for them joining us.
And thanks, Forrest Wilson, for all your hard work behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The more people, the better. This show definitely doesn't happen, as is really anything that we do here at NASA Marshall and the agency across. It takes a team of people to make things happen. And so I think we are getting ready to do, we have another guest that's getting ready to come up in the next few minutes. And so real quickly, while we wait for our guest, if they haven't joined us, I was going to give a quick run through our NASA social media because once again, we've got different ways that you at home can participate tonight. You can tweet your questions to @NASA_Marshall. That's @NASA_Marshall. And as I scroll through my iPad and my laptop, I see a lot of different content, a lot of different posts that are coming along. We've got some great support behind the scenes who are helping answer all these questions. So continue to tweet your questions. You could also use the hashtag #AskNASA, #AskNASA. So you can tweet it to us or you can use that hashtag, as well as our photo contest tonight. So starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, if you get a chance, hopefully if the cloud's clear, to take a photo of the total lunar eclipse, you'll get a chance to send your photo to NASA Marshall Facebook page, the top link. There's a chance for you to go in there and submit your photo. And then from there, we're going to take a chance, probably the next day or two, we're going to select the best photos and let you, the viewers at home, view them and vote on them. And then the best images we'll post on NASA social media accounts, NASA Twitter, the agency-wide ones, NASA Twitter, NASA Instagram. Of course, a lot of people probably remember just how big our NASA Instagram was, especially for New Horizons and Pluto. That was by far the largest one. And so largest post we put on NASA Instagram. And so don't forget to submit your photos later. And we've got another guest joining us live right now on the phone. Hello, Judy, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you, and we appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you very much.
It'd be my pleasure. Looks like you have a lot of interesting things going on.
Absolutely, and I know you've got a great history, a rich history and tradition of supporting. And so I'm going to let you introduce yourself. If you would, tell our viewer and our audience your name, your title, and the roles and responsibilities you have at NASA's Johnson Space Center.
I'm Judy Alton. I'm the curator of the Genesis Solar Wind Samples, which is my first experience with a flight mission. And it takes a lot of precision to analyze these samples. As curators, we just try and preserve them and prepare them for research teams that want to work on them. My history goes back a little further. I've been at the Space Center since 1974. And I started out working in the lunar curation laboratory, and we're the folks that take good care of all those rocks that the Apollo astronauts brought back, and there's even a few from some of the Soviet robotic missions.
Well, that sounds like a very interesting job, especially working in the curation lab. And so what are some of the kind of samples? You talked about the Apollo samples. How do you guys use them, and what do you do with these samples since the Apollo missions have been a while? So are you still using them for research currently?
They are being used for research. Quite a few go out. First samples came back in '69. We've had a total of about 840 pounds of samples, and about 80% of them by weight are what we call pristine, meaning they are in vaults under nitrogen for safekeeping. But researchers can ask for them for research projects, and when they're approved, then we would prepare them and send those to them. So there's still a lot of interest in lunar samples, and in recent years, people have thought about going back to the moon and doing, bringing back more samples.
Absolutely. We're showing some images that you and some of your colleagues provided us of what goes on there at the Johnson Space Center. And if you could just kind of give us an idea of some of the different facilities and the type of outfits that you wear and the work that you do, so that everybody at home can exactly understand as we scroll through some of these images.
Okay. I don't know which image you have up now. In the lunar lab, it's a very cleanly built lab. Everything is HEPA filtered. And as we go into each room, the room in the interior is at higher pressure so that any particles in the air that would be contaminants go outward. You need to wear a completely covered, what we call bunny suits, and then you have a head cover on to keep your hair in. People are really dirty. They can shed about 7 pounds of skin and hair and stuff a year. So we want to keep the lab very clean. And what you see in that picture is those rocks are in a cabinet full of nitrogen. So they are isolated from us dirty people by being inside of a glove box, and we're on the outside. In that picture, I can't see that you see the people, but the white-suited figures. Okay, now we've jumped to, this is the Genesis Solar Wind Sample Lab that I curate, and these two folks are doing an inventory of the fragments from the Genesis mission. All of these pictures are from Genesis, which is a Class 10 lab, and we have ultra-filtered air that goes from ceiling to floor. And in one lab, we use ultra-pure water to clean tools, and we also clean some of the Genesis samples off with it. Now, that does not happen in the other collections like the Apollo moon rocks or meteorites, but for Genesis, which in spite of our efforts to keep everything super clean, had a hard landing when it was returned to Earth, so the pieces were broken up, and we have been able to clean them off and getting some good science, primary science out of the Genesis samples. Those were to enable us, or the science teams, to measure the precise composition of the sun. You know, we brought rocks back from the moon. We could analyze their composition very precisely and make a lot of good deductions about the moon. We jumped labs once again. This is the meteorite lab. You see glove boxes. Those samples are handled under nitrogen inside of glove boxes. And you'll notice that the gloves poke out into the room. That's because all of these glove boxes are at slightly positive pressure nitrogen, so that if there's ever a pinhole in the glove, there would nothing from the room would leak into where the samples are.
Well, Judy, if you could, tell us a little bit about what is or what was one of the first eclipses that you experienced. Were you viewing that as a child? Do you remember that, or is it something that was work related?
Okay, could you say that first part again?
Absolutely. We're curious about your first experience really remembering viewing a lunar eclipse or even a solar eclipse? Is that something that you remember as a child or maybe in college studying to be to work at NASA?
I didn't see a lunar eclipse until I came to Houston, and probably was already working for the Space Center at that time. But you are right. For all of your viewers who are out there somewhere, possibly at high elevation with clear skies, I envy them. It's overcast here.
In Houston too.
But being outside and seeing the moon and see that happen, or even if you don't have an eclipse, the moon is just a very fascinating object.
I think Mitzi would agree with that.
Absolutely.
And you guys actually have a lot in common. We're talking about the Genesis program, and you're a solar, I want to say solar astronomer. Is that correct? Or
Solar astronomy
No.
is fine.
Okay, Mitzi's a solar astronomer, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. My training's in chemistry, and I would say geochemistry, but I guess if you wanted to be really precise, it would be cosmochemistry, right?
That sounds right. Could you say that you're a selenologist?
I would think maybe you could.
Judy, it's been great having you on. We appreciate you joining us from the Johnson Space Center. I know some of your other colleagues will join us in just a few moments, actually just probably within the rest of the night, next hour or two. And so we really appreciate your time and want to wish you the best of luck. I heard you say that the weather is a little cloudy there in Houston, Texas. Is that correct?
That is.
Well, we hope that changes. So far we know it's cloudy in Alabama, it's cloudy in Lafayette, Louisiana, and all the way down to Houston, Texas.
Okay, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
All right, thank you. We appreciate it. Once again, that was Judy Alton, and she works at the Johnson Space Center. Her title is Genesis Solar Wind Sample Curator, and she has a lot of history working there. Actually, I forget when she said she started working there, but I know she's been there for a while, gone through a lot of the Genesis program, which is something that I would think you're probably familiar with.
A bit. Just simply that the Genesis, I believe, simply gathered samples from space and brought them back to Earth, and unfortunately it was a hard landing. So she did talk about the problems that arose because of that.
Yeah, and I think it was and she didn't mention it, how they return these samples of solar wind, and so aerogel.
Aerogel.
Right?
That's right.
They've used that in several other missions too. Stardust?
Not certain, but I do know that aerogel, I believe, was kind of pioneered here at Marshall, and it has some interesting properties, including very good insulation properties, and so it has a lot of different uses.
Yeah, that's really great, and so it was wonderful having her join us. And so let's go to some social media questions while we got a few moments before our next guest joins us. And so, Mitzi, I'll pull a couple questions, and maybe just one or two quickly while we get our next guest ready to go. Let's do this one right here. I've been looking at this one. This is from @_storm_22. And the question is, why or is it true that lunar eclipses occur more commonly than solar eclipses? Is that true, and why would that be the case?
No, it's not. It's not really true. They're about 50-50. I believe Fred Espenak did a study, and they're about 50% as common. The difference, the main difference, is that lunar eclipses, because the Earth is so much larger than the Moon, the shadow that the Earth casts is very large, and the Moon goes through the shadow and has a lot of time to go through the shadow. So a large portion of the Earth has a good opportunity to see a lunar eclipse. But during a solar eclipse, because the Moon shadow is very, very small and narrow, that path of totality is very, very small, narrow, and so not many people have an opportunity to see it.
Right.
When there's a lunar eclipse, about half the globe, whenever, wherever it's nighttime.
Yeah, and we're fortunate that our half of the globe tonight, except for the clouds. And
Clouds.
so we'll see how that works out for us as we continue with our guests joining us live here as we broadcast at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, with a stream of guests joining us all night long. And our next guest is actually online right now. Hello, Dr. David Dearborn. Are you there? Can you hear us, sir?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. We appreciate you joining us. It's wonderful to have your expertise, and I know, I believe you and Mitzi go back and have a lot of camaraderie together.
Just a little bit.
I think that's tongue-in-cheek.
Absolutely. I remember Mitzi from, I think, 1982.
That's about right, Dave.
We're not supposed to talk about that being old?
No, we're not supposed to talk
sorry.
about that. I actually met Dr. Dearborn in Cusco, Peru, where he was doing research on the astronomy of the Inca. He's actually a scientist at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, and he's done work on stellar nucleosynthesis and has been involved in looking at ways that we might be able to deflect asteroids from hitting the Earth. And Dave, when and where did you observe your first eclipse, either lunar or solar?
Well, the first solar eclipse was actually in Baja, Mexico. And I had been down at Teotihuacan first and then moved over to Baja for the eclipse. The first lunar eclipse would have been somewhere in Texas back in the bejesus of time.
So why do you find eclipses interesting?
Well, they're wrong. When you look at the sky, you see stars and you recognize them and they're friends, and you travel to a new place and you see the same stars, and you're aware of the cycle of the moon. And as your program talked about earlier, full moons have been important for people a long time when they didn't have lights. And so you get aware of all of that. And then when you see an eclipse, it's wrong. A solar eclipse is dramatically wrong because you were there and it was the middle of the day and suddenly it goes dark and you actually see stars. Lunar eclipses are also wrong because you had a big bright moon and it was making it nice out at night and you could see things, and suddenly the moon starts getting red and slowly darkens, and it's wrong.
It's kind of interesting because here in Huntsville we have clouds again, and my very first eclipse was a total solar eclipse in 1970, and it was totally cloudy. But as you said, it was wrong. It was midday, and it suddenly got dark. It was very, very strange. So even though it was overcast, the darkness that happened as a result of that eclipse was very strange.
No, that's exactly right, and that's why you asked me to talk a little bit about how the Inca responded to eclipses.
Yes.
And in the case of the Inca, they believed that the sun was a deity that had the power to make things grow. And while some people might quibble about deity, certainly the sun has the power to make things grow. And they also thought the moon as a deity and his wife. And so these were very important members of their pantheon. And when you had an eclipse, clearly something was wrong. One of the Jesuit priests who talked to the peoples in the early colonial days said that they thought either a lion or a serpent was eating the sun or the moon, depending on whether it was a solar or lunar eclipse, and that people would go out and make noise and cause the dogs to yell and try and drive whatever it was killing the moon or killing the sun away. And they were worried that the end of the world might come if they became totally darkened and dead.
But Dave, the Inca did not predict eclipses. They weren't aware that they were going to happen, were they? Did they?
That's correct. The Maya in Mexico clearly had a method of knowing that eclipses would occur on certain dates, or at least might occur on certain dates. The Inca did not. We don't have evidence that the Inca had that skill, and that probably made it even more dramatic that something that was completely unexpected happened. There were eclipses observed in the early colonial period, and by, for example, Pedro Pizarro, a cousin of Francisco, the original conqueror, and again described how frightened it made people that their deity might be attacked in this way, and that it was clearly a sign that something was going wrong here on the earth. They were very much happier when the moon came back.
Now, when you say colonial period, you're talking about maybe 1530s or so.
That's right. In this case, it was the one that was observed by Pedro Pizarro was in 1543, and Garcilaso de la Vega, who is also a fellow who wrote and is popularly read by people who are going to Peru. He was the son of a Spanish captain and an Inca princess, and he lived in Cusco till he was 19. And he also was in Cusco when this 1543 solar eclipse occurred, and although in Cusco it was only about 80% total, not 100%.
So, solar eclipses, where do you plan to be in 2017 on August 21st when we have a total solar eclipse going all the way across the United States?
Well, the plans aren't solid yet, but as I recall, looking at Fred Espinak's ephemeris on the whole thing, it looks like it'll be the longest duration somewhere around Iowa, and when we'll start folding that together with the weather in August to decide where's a nice place to go and look up and see the eclipse.
That sounds like a great idea, Dave, and I wish you luck in finding the best place. And I hope you have some clear skies out there in California where there are lots of fires and no rain and 5-minute showers. And
well, we're a little cloudy right now, but I'm not going to worry for about another hour till the sun actually goes down.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you'll have clear skies.
We'll make offerings to all the right gods.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you, Mitz.
Excellent. That was Dr. David Dearborn from the Lawrence Livermore National Lab. Joining us, given some of his expertise on not only lunar astronomy but also archaeoastronomy.
Archaeoastronomy, yes.
That's great. I'm a big fan of that. That's a really, really great conversation. I'd like to have him on several more times to talk about it, especially when you get a chance to
hear that, Dave.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was very interesting. And so, thank you very much. We appreciate that. That was another one of our great guests joining us tonight. And so we got a lot of great content. Lots of guests calling in. We've got our social media updates that we're doing all night tonight. In fact, if we want to go through and do some social media questions and answering here, let's see. I'm going to actually ask you a couple questions, Mitzi, and then I'm going to bring up some images that kind of hopefully answer some of these questions. So some of these are really simple. Actually, I'm highlighting a few right now. And so this one, at Betsy, yeah, there we go. At Betsy Vile is asking us if there's any way to show a live stream from a satellite or space station that would actually be of the eclipse. And so is that something that would be possible?
Possible. It might be possible to show video images from the space station. Mm-hmm. But since the space station has a 90-minute orbit, it would not be in the shadow for a very long time. So
Absolutely.
it would see a little bit, and then it would not see very much more.
That's exactly right. And so we got an image we're showing right now. This is an actual eclipse, so you can see the moon shadow being cast back onto Earth. As station flies by, as you said, at almost 18,000 miles an hour. It's in a hustle. It's moving along, so it doesn't stay stationary to get a long image. So video would be limited at best, but we have seen some stills from previous eclipses. So you can see one right here. And so that's a great question that came in from at Betsy Vile. We're not streaming videos from satellites or space station, but there are some imagery out there, and this being one of them. So you can see this is a great representation to kind of show the people on the planet, on planet Earth, who would be in the eclipse shadow and could see it. And while we keep saying the Americas can see this one, West Africa and Europe, but not other parts of the country.
But that particular image would be a solar eclipse shadow.
Oh, right. This one's showing, but the idea we're getting a good chance of a little bit of a shadow as we go through and give some people an idea of, and we've got a map also that we'll be able to take here in a little bit that shows people, and we're getting a lot of questions. They're talking about timeline of what time can I see across the Americas, Central Time, Mountain Time, and so that's one great opportunity right there. And so there's also another question, if I go through here and find it quickly enough, and it was about what it would look like actually. What would the moon look like if we were, if you were standing on the moon or standing on Earth? And kind of, I think we've got some animation. If we go back to camera 1 real quick, I can scroll through and find the image so that we can ask and show. Real quick, let me scroll through here and find this image. People are curious about what does it look like from the moon and from Earth. And so these images right here give you a good idea We'll bring this one up. 1, 2, 3, right here. And so this one's looking back from the moon, looking back. So once again, just different images are giving people different kinds of perspectives.
Now that's an artist's concept, I believe.
Right.
So if you were standing on the surface of the moon, you would still see the Earth. I mean, it would be dark. So it would be sort of like a solar eclipse, except that in reverse. You're on the moon, you can see the Earth. And then when you're in the umbral part of the shadow and the very darkest part, there's a ring of sunlight around the edge, around the limb of the Earth. And as a couple of people have said, it's like all the sunrises and sunsets are happening at once.
Yeah, definitely and that kind of ties into why people call it a blood moon. I think the refraction of the light and some of it. So we got another image we can show, because it's as always, images are worth 1,000 words. And so some of the images, this one especially kind of shows some of the diffraction, I think. And so could you walk us through this one, please?
It's actually the sunlight. Sunlight is a combination of all different colors of light, and the light shines through Earth's atmosphere where it's scattered, and essentially it's filtered. The scattering essentially causes us to have blue skies on the Earth. This is called Rayleigh scattering, but that means that the light that is left to shine on the moon when we're having this eclipse is red. Almost all of the other light has been filtered out by the atmosphere of the Earth. And so from Earth, the moon is going to appear reddish in color as it moves through the shadow, because it's essentially still reflecting the light of the sun, but it's reflecting light that's been scattered and filtered by Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, and we really hope that these animations help people understand why they call it a blood moon. And then we talked earlier about why it's called a supermoon, and so we kind of combine those together. Supermoon based on the fact that it's a little closer in the moon's orbit around the Earth, and then the blood moon based on the color, and so they may be misnomers.
Actually, I'd like to get totally away from the use of the word blood moon.
Oh yeah, you and every other astronomer and scientist.
It's not a really good term, and this particular eclipse is interesting. It's part of a tetrad. We were hoping that we were going to get to see it in Huntsville because typically September is a dry month, but it's simply not any different than any other lunar eclipse. Almost all lunar eclipses are going to appear reddish, and the depth of the color, the darkness of the particular eclipse is going to be dependent on things like volcanic eruptions, major fires that might have happened on Earth. So it's just a typical eclipse, and it's getting a lot of attention because we can do it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely the blood moon and the supermoon, and they kind of combine together. And it's a modern day terminology, but it's one that a lot of people seem to be using. And so that's actually one of the hashtags that we're using tonight, as we have several different things that are going on that you can get involved with at home. Definitely want to encourage as much audience participation. Make sure you join digital, social, online media conversations. So you can do that through a couple different ways. Once again, we're going through and scrolling and reading a lot of different questions. We're getting a lot. I see people, obviously the biggest tweets and the most amount of tweets that we're getting are people just saying that the weather is cloudy and they're not able to see. And we would be providing you even more of a live feed. We got several live feeds throughout the country that are queued up. However, they're just cloudy. We're not getting those feeds. And so we can't do anything about the weather, unfortunately. As you can see, the view right here from Lafayette Science Museum, the sun is set. However, Mitzi, it still looks like it's very cloudy there.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and so Lafayette Science Museum was on board. The Fernbank Science Center that we spoke with earlier, that was Ed Albin, Dr. Ed Albin, and April. I didn't catch April's last name. April Witt. And so we thank them for joining us. That was one of the live feeds. Same thing. They had a cloudy perspective. The Adler Museum. A lot of these telescopes that we got set up are receiving, just have cloudy weather. And so we're kind of scrolling through. We'll do the best we can to bring you as many feeds as at least hopefully some feeds as possible. especially as time goes on. And so we continue to go through our questions. We're going to actually have, we're going to be joined here in just a few moments. Actually, as soon as she's ready, we can do that. We're going to have one of our public affairs officers join us here. Shannon Ridinger will join us in just a moment. And she's going to give us a social media update, because not only can you tweet your questions at NASA_Marshall, and we've got a whole team of experts that are back in our social media conference room that are answering questions, as many as we can tonight. And throughout the week, we'll go through, me personally as well, go through and answer as many questions. And I'm actually right now live tweeting and live liking and sharing and faving as many as possible. But also we have our photo contest. And so I think Shannon, Miss Shannon Ridinger, is going to give us a quick social media update and just how that's going tonight. So Shannon, if you're ready, we'd love to hear your experience with what's going on behind the scenes on social media.
Hey Chris, hey Mitzi. Yeah, we're getting such a great response on social media tonight. We've gotten images from Maine and New York City, and we have put those on our Twitter. So if you are in a cloudy area, you can please go to the Marshall Twitter, and that's at NASA_Marshall, and you can see the tweets that we've gotten some pretty good photos. So obviously it's not that cloudy in Maine and New York City. We're also on Facebook, so you can go to the NASA Marshall Facebook page. That's facebook.com/NASA Marshall, where we're going to be doing a photo contest starting about 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can actually upload your photos of the eclipse to our Facebook page. And also, of course, follow us on Twitter at NASA_Marshall, where we are taking your questions using the hashtag AskNASA. So Chris and Missy, we've got a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you guys from our Twitter feed. This is from @CK_Coronas, and he says, hey, at NASA Marshall, have either of you ever witnessed a blood moon before? And if so, how was your experience?
It's a great question. We appreciate you taking the time to join us on social media and answer these questions. Mitzi has seen more than I have, just based on her experience. This is her field of expertise, working in this kind of content. And so I have seen one from inside the studio, from one of the tetrad, but it was still cloudy right then also. So I think we just saw the live feed. But you have probably a lot more experience answering, seeing eclipses, especially blood moons.
I have never seen a blood moon. I have seen a lunar eclipse. I have seen many lunar eclipses. And I'm beginning to wonder how in the world, for an individual raised in the southeastern part of the United States, was I ever able to see any lunar eclipses? Because the last 4 lunar eclipses that were spaced 6 months apart were totally cloudy here in Huntsville. I believe the last one we got maybe 5 or 10 minutes where we could see the eclipse before it set behind the trees. So my track record hasn't been good lately.
No, that's crazy too. I've only been here at NASA Marshall for 1 year, but it's the same thing. It's just cloudy. We're fortunate to have these live feeds. Hopefully that really helps people get a chance. Hopefully they'll clear up. You can kind of see the moon right now, trying to peek out a little bit.
In Lafayette, they have a little bit of moonlight.
And so the
peeking
time
through the
frame.
clouds.
What would be the time frame if you were in Lafayette Science Museum right now?
Well, they're Central Daylight Time, so the time there is just before 8 p.m. And let's see here, 8:07, the partial eclipse begins. So in maybe 10 minutes or so, the moon will begin to move into the umbral part of the shadow. And if they're lucky, they might actually see a glimpse of the eclipse there in Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm
going to keep my fingers crossed, as is everybody here helping. And so Shannon, back to you for some more of our social media questions. Give us another question. What else are you reading there on Twitter?
Okay, Chris, and this is something that you guys, I think, have probably been hearing and talking about all night, but we're getting a lot of questions, and this one is from @JimmyBuckets21. Is it even possible to get any kind of good or decent view with cloudy skies of the eclipse?
Can you say that question again?
Is it possible to get a good or decent view with cloudy skies?
If you cannot see the full moon through the clouds, and sometimes that's possible, you will not see the eclipse. If the clouds are thin enough, and sometimes they can be, you can see parts of the eclipse, I'm sure. But keep checking outside, keep looking. and check your weather report and hope things clear up where you are.
Yeah, that's about the best advice we can get. And so, Shannon, are there any more questions you have on social media, or do you want to,
yeah. So let's do one more. So this is from Emma, and Emma at Night Flash on Twitter, and she says, when will the next super blood moon happen?
I bet she says never.
I don't know.
We're having a behind-the-scenes battle on using super blood moon and blood moon or not. It's pretty fun back here,
isn't it?
Actually, so what? This was the fourth of the tetrad, correct?
This is the fourth of the tetrad. The next tetrad will not be until 2032, I believe.
Yes, 32 or 33. One of them, yeah, 32.
32 or 33, and if I can't remember, but I believe there's going to be another perigee lunar eclipse during that tetrad, maybe in 2033. But I would have to double check my records.
Absolutely, awesome. We appreciate that, Shannon. Anything else you want to say?
No, just keep your questions coming. Please follow us on Twitter. That's at NASA_Marshall. You can use the hashtag AskNASA, and we'll be behind the scenes answering your questions. So please just continue to stay with us.
Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate that. Shannon Ridinger, she's one of our public affairs officers here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. And so quickly for our global audience, because we're being streamed on NASA TV, NASA Ustream, as well as our NASA Marshall account. We've got viewers from all around the world. We've got questions that are coming in from all around the world. And so Huntsville, Alabama, we're in the great state of Alabama. We're in the southeastern part of the United States. This is, if you know where the Gulf of Mexico is, and the state of Florida, we're just above the state of Florida. And Huntsville is the northern part of that state. And so we're really close to the state of Tennessee. And so we talk about different perspectives. Our view here from Huntsville, Alabama, the view in Lafayette, Louisiana, which is a little south of us, to the east of us in, where was that? Oh, Atlanta for Fernbank.
Atlanta. And
so we're all kind of in the southeastern part of the United States. And so far, still experiencing clouds. We're hoping that that clears up. But it's great having Shannon Ridinger here tonight, working behind the scenes, one of our media she's a public affairs officer. She's joined by some of our media specialists who are working behind the scenes. I know Jennifer Harbaugh is here, as well as Will Bryan, and they're working to answer all your social media questions, as well as some of our other guest experts who are in the social media room. And so we appreciate you taking the time to get involved and tweet your questions, and to also participate in our photo contest. And so we've got guests that have been joining us all night tonight. Mitzi's done a great job. You've got some great guests, and a lot of these are friends that you've known for a long time.
Many of them I've known for quite a long time, yes.
And so we've got one of our guests that will be joining us in the next few minutes, and this gives us a chance to kind of go on to Twitter and show some of these images that we've seen. I've got one on my computer right now as we kind of go through and look at some people who are actually getting a chance to see the moon on Twitter. We're having them post these images to us, and so if we're able to take these, we'll see. For people who are actually showing some images, we here, our live feeds are all cloudy, so we unfortunately aren't able to see those. But if we're talking about the eclipse and the tetrad and the blood moon and all these things, so let's give people at home exactly a tetrad. What is a tetrad, and how does that work for all our viewers at home?
A tetrad is simply a series of lunar eclipses that are roughly about 6 months apart, and tetrad means 4. So there are have been four lunar eclipses in this most recent one. And the tetrads happen just as a result of the orbit of the moon around the Earth and the Earth around the sun, and it's a completely normal thing that happens due to the orbital geometry of our moon and our own planet Earth.
And so we experienced 4, and we've tried to live stream a few of them here the past couple, between 2014 and 2015. In fact, there was another one in our previous one was in April. And same thing. And so I was just looking up really quickly. 2032 and 2033 is the next series of tetrads that will roll through. And so you can see some animation here that we're showing And talking about the different kinds of month, I saw right there real quickly showing part of the tetrads and kind of when they're available. And so I know 2032, 33 is a piece away, but it's something to look forward to, because you guys as astronomers, you plan out well in advance when the next eclipse are. I mean, we were talking earlier about the 2017 eclipse 2 years in advance, and so I know you probably already have plans for that. You may even have your bags packed.
No, I'm afraid not. Not for that one.
I know if you talk about some places on Earth that only experience, for example, one of the solar eclipses in the past previous years, recent years too, in fact, I think was only visible in North Africa. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of astronomers and physicists or scientists took the time to travel to North Africa to see that, because that was the only place on the planet where they're going to actually be able to experience that solar eclipse.
Or Antarctica, or places up in the north around Svalbard, or Zambia, Africa. Zambia was very well placed for a couple of solar eclipses. And Australia, the middle of the Pacific. Since Earth is covered mostly by oceans, many of the solar eclipses, because that path of totality is so narrow, many of the solar eclipses happen in the middle of the ocean. So we don't have an opportunity to see them easily.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that would be very difficult to get there, especially in the middle of the ocean. And so is there new science to gather? If you're going to take the time to have, dozens or if not hundreds of scientists travel the country to go to a certain location, what kind of new science are they able to provide, or is the new science they can get by studying these phenomena?
It's interesting because lunar eclipses have been very well studied, and it's a good opportunity to learn a little bit more about our own atmosphere. But for the solar eclipses, I'm going to use the word atmosphere. We can also learn something about the sun's atmosphere by studying solar eclipses as well.
Okay, that's great. And that's the kind of thing is, especially for the younger generation to know to continue to go into these kind of fields. There's still research, there's still questions that could be answered. And so we always are, once again, at NASA encouraging the next generation of future explorers and scientists to get involved in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And so great questions, great engagement tonight from our guests, our social media guests, all our fans joining us all around the world. And so we continue that streak going on right now as we have Edgar Castro is joining us on the telephone right now. And so let's double check and make sure. Hello, sir. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir, we do. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. And Mitzi, this is
Okay.
another person who I think you go back and have a good relationship with.
Yes, hello, Mitzi. Hi. How are you? I'm reporting the lunar eclipse from Central America. Unfortunately, the skies are completely covered by the clouds here also, and we amateur astronomers are suffering, waiting for some space and some opportunity to watch this extraordinary lunar eclipse. However, most of the country is completely covered and cloudy, and we are just waiting for this opportunity to watch this important event.
Edgar, we actually have here in the studio a young engineer who is originally from Puerto Rico, who speaks Spanish, and I'm going to ask her to help us with a little bit of Spanish.
Okay, that will be good.
And if you give me just a minute and let her get into position here. Her name is Lauren, and I am going to let her introduce herself. But before I do, let me just say that you are from Guatemala, and you live in Guatemala City, and you are now the director of the astronomy diploma at Galileo University there in Guatemala City. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Lauren. Hi, Edgar. This is Lauren Badia. And Lauren, can you say hello? Saludos, I
Salud.
believe.
Mucho gusto, Lauren.
Mucho gusto, Loren. Soy Edgar Castro aquí. Tenemos cielos nublados en Guatemala y estamos preocupados por eso.
Ya, aquí también tenemos nubes, desafortunadamente.
Sí, nosotros estamos tratando de ver algo desde diferentes puntos del país. Algunos astrónomos aficionados se desplazaron para la costa sur, otros están en la ciudad de Guatemala y otros están en el oriente del país, tratando de ver si en algún punto se logran despejar las nubes y podemos observar la luna y poder observar el eclipse, así como la superluna. Y ese es el esfuerzo que estamos haciendo y por lo menos vamos a probar hasta que termine el tiempo del eclipse.
Ya, nosotros estamos esperando a que en la próxima hora o 2 horas más o menos, mientras está roja la luna, que es cuando se ve más linda, podamos poderla ver, pero a ver, esperemos tener suerte la noche de hoy.
Sí, lamentablemente, pues vivimos en esta área del mundo en donde hay muchas nubes en esta época del año y mucha lluvia, porque este es un evento astronómico que podríamos utilizar para que los niños y muchas personas puedan apreciar lo que es un fenómeno astronómico que es muy fácil de ver, es muy sencillo y no se necesita ningún instrumento para poder observar. Y por eso lo habíamos promovido mucho, lo habíamos anunciado bastante para que mucha gente lo viera, pero desafortunadamente las nubes no nos están permitiendo hacerlo. Sin embargo, estamos tratando de conseguir fotografías y este broadcast que ustedes tienen nos están ayudando mucho para poder verlo. Si no se puede con el plan A, entonces estamos usando el plan B.
Exacto.
Tenemos preguntas. We have questions.
¿Tiene preguntas?
You began studying astronomy in 1970, and there was a total solar eclipse that year. Could you see it?
Oh, I'm afraid I missed that one because I was just a beginner. I was starting and I was not just as informed as I am today. I'm sorry. But I was able to watch the big one, the total solar eclipse of July 11th in 1991, which was amazing because it was one of the eclipses with the longest duration. It was about 6 minutes in totality, and we could enjoy the sky. It was completely clear, and we could watch the planets, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, shining in just the noon at noon. And this was one of the most impressive observations that I have made in all my life. I saw many people crying, excited by the astronomical fact.
Lauren, can you summarize what he said in Spanish?
Yes. Pude observar el eclipse del 11 de julio de 1991 en las costas de Guatemala, en la costa sur, y pudimos observar el eclipse en toda su totalidad con cielo despejado. Fue una de las observaciones más impresionantes que he hecho en toda mi vida y la guardo como una de las más grandes observaciones realizadas.
Okay. I have a question about the Maya.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, please.
And Lauren, would you repeat this in Spanish for me?
Okay.
The Maya carefully observed the sky, and they were advanced civilization about 2,000 years ago. Are there any Maya traditions that Edgar knows that relate to lunar eclipses?
Los mayas era una civilización de hace 2000 años atrás y ellos observaban el cielo muy cuidadosamente. Edgar, ¿hay alguna tradición maya astronómica que tú conozcas y que sepas que puedas compartir con nosotros?
Sí, los mayas, como dijeron, eran grandes astrónomos y tenían la capacidad de controlar los eclipses, y ellos pensaban que cuando había un eclipse causaba un gran cambio en la humanidad. Pensaban que los hombres perdían el control de sus emociones, pero también al mismo tiempo que fortalecían la paz interna y también evitaban los conflictos. Para ellos los eclipses simbolizaban cambios para una era mejor, y eran muy conscientes, por cierto, del cuidado que debemos tener con el ambiente que nos rodea. Eso me llama mucho la atención, porque los mayas ya se preocupaban del medio ambiente desde ese entonces, y esta es parte de las tradiciones que tenían. Los eclipses eran cambios, y eran cambios para mejorar, para tener paz y para tener más tranquilidad y vivir en paz con el medio ambiente.
Mitzi, Edgar basically said that they were big astronomers and they did observe the skies, and they carefully predicted when they were going to happen, and they signified changes that were going to happen, future changes that will happen, but they took it as a good thing, as a good faith kind of thing, and they were to conserve the earth, to conserve our environment, so that those changes were good. So it was seen as a good faith change that would happen.
Well, that's very interesting. I have one more question.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
El Volcán Pacaya, the volcano Pacaya, is very, very popular for tourists. Has that volcano caused you any problem when you were observing?
Oh, not really. Pacaya and the Fuego volcanoes are active, yes, but they have been good. They are very impressive to watch, to come and see, but they have not interfered in our observations, unfortunately, because we can see the lava flowing down on the slopes, but it's not something to worry about. It's more a big spectacle, a nice thing to see, but never intervening or never preventing any astronomical observation.
Para nuestros televidentes, la pregunta de Mitzi fue que si el volcán Pacaya en Guatemala interviene con las observaciones del observatorio. Usualmente cuando el volcán erupta puede haber partículas en el ambiente y en la atmósfera y no pueden permitir ver, pero Edgardo básicamente dice que no, que eso no interviene la mayoría del tiempo. Sí es un gran espectáculo que sucede de vez en cuando, pero no tiende a intervenir con las observaciones astronómicas.
Exacto.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope, Edgar, that the skies might clear for you in Guatemala City, and the rest of Guatemala, Central America, and for the rest of our viewers in South America as well. And thanks again, Edgar. Clear skies.
Thank you very much, Mitzi, and NASA team. Thanks. Bye-bye.
That was excellent. One of my favorite interviews so far. I want to thank Edgar Castro at the Galileo University in Guatemala City, and also want to thank Lauren Badia. Excellent. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, as do so many people, our international audience, once again, all around the world joining us as we broadcast this several live feeds, hopefully a lot of live feeds of tonight's 2015 total lunar eclipse. That was great. I appreciate that. We had Lauren involved with them, wonderful, and what I liked about that, not only the mix of English and Spanish, but as we did some of the bio notes, that Edgar started out as being self-taught.
That's right.
Which is really great. And once again, it just goes to show the level that you can reach. You just got to start somewhere. So self-taught, and then went on to now he's the director at renowned facilities, and so that's really quite an achievement.
Yeah.
And so once again, we've been bringing you live coverage. We've got a lot of different cameras available, not only here in the studio, but also throughout the United States. And we've been taking questions as well on social media. And so, Mitzi, I got a couple questions here highlighted. Once again, if you got questions, keep them coming in. We have, the word inundated would probably work. We've got lots of tweets that are coming in. So if you have a question, you want to talk about the total lunar eclipse tonight, hashtag super blood moon, feel free to tweet us at NASA_Marshall. You tweet your questions, and our social media team working in our conference room is taking time to answer them, as well as our special guest expert joining us here at the broadcast desk. And so, Mitzi, this question is from @Kelly Nesson. And her question is, will the eclipse have any effect on the tides?
That's actually an excellent question. Full moons, and you have to have a full moon to have a total lunar eclipse, the full moon will have an effect on tides. And because this particular full moon is at perigee, the tides might be a little bit higher than normal. This is to be expected, and there's nothing really unusual about it. It's just that, yes, the tides are going to be a little bit higher than they would be at another full moon.
Right, because the moon does affect tides.
Yes.
And of course, I don't know if it affects cloudiness, but I think eclipse seem to generate clouds in Alabama.
In Huntsville, anyway.
The one last question real quick. This one is from @saltsanddesign. This one, I really like this one. Hello, @NASA_Marshall. My boys want to know if the exact number of moon craters is known. How many moon craters are on the moon? If a moon had craters, how many craters would be on the moon?
Never be afraid to say, I don't know, and I don't know.
No, that's a great answer. You're right. There's never a dumb question, and there's never anything wrong with saying that I don't know the answer. In fact,
and actually, new craters are being formed on the moon all the time. So I'm not sure it's possible to say how many there are.
Oh, you get it's 2 for 1. You get an answer that if you don't know, and then obviously it's an evolving, it doesn't evolve from a geological standpoint, but it's the fact that it gets impacted by meteorites impacting it and causing different kinds of craters, modified, destroyed craters, because it's thin on the atmosphere on the moon. So that number changes.
That number changes, yes.
Oh, absolutely. Let's check our time here real quick.
And sometimes we can actually see. We have a group here at Marshall who observes the moon, and sometimes they see impacts on the moon, so they can actually see new craters being formed. They're small, typically. I don't think they've seen any very large ones, but it does happen, and it happens all the time. And some of them can be, just as tiny as a penny or smaller. And others can range up to the size of Great Copernicus or Tycho.
Wonderful questions coming in all night long. Once again, if you've got your questions, you could tweet them to @NASA_Marshall, as well as you can use the hashtag #AskNASA. And then we'll have our crack staff go along the night and answer as many questions as possible. And we've also been reminding viewers that starting tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, we are opening up our photo contest for tonight's total lunar eclipse. And so you, as a viewer at home, can take your best photo of the total lunar eclipse, and you can submit that, 1 photo per user. You can go to our NASA Marshall Facebook account, and there across the top of our Facebook account are the tabs for photos and timeline, and there's a hashtag superbloodmoon tab, and you can click on that tab and you'll be able to submit your photos. It'll take you to a link that allows you to submit your photo. And so we will get, obviously, lots, to put it mildly, lots of photos. We'll go through as a team the next 24 to 48 hours. We're going to go through and judge these photos, go through and categorize them, and then put them up on a Flickr gallery. Well, if it's Flickr, put them up on a social media gallery to be determined later, and then let our audience view on which ones they like the best, and those best photos, or the best photo, we will put on our NASA social media accounts. So guests joining us here, tweet chat all night with our guest experts, calling in live, our guest experts here in the studio. And so far I think we've had a great time, except for the fact that we've got clouds.
Yes, I certainly wish we could make the clouds go away, but we should be able to see, if we didn't have clouds, this eclipse all across the Americas, the northern and the southern hemisphere. So we have Canada, the United States, Mexico, Central America, and we have South America. And if there are any listeners, viewers in Brazil, or any Portuguese-speaking country. We actually have someone here who can speak Portuguese. It's Dr. Jim Spann. So if you have any questions in Portuguese, please don't hesitate to send them to us. Spanish, please go right ahead, send those questions in Spanish as well, and we'll take care of you.
That's great. That's a great point. Thank you for mentioning that. Not only are the staff behind the scenes answering all the questions, but Lauren and Dr. James Spann. And so we saw him earlier just walk in. And so once again, and it's a testament to how much we enjoy our job. It's Sunday night and we're all here on a weekend night talking total lunar eclipse. People behind the scenes, people here in the studio. And so speaking of talking total lunar eclipse, we have another one of our special guest experts joining us live on the telephone tonight. Hello, are you there? Can you hear us?
Hi, are you talking to me?
Yes, we are talking to you. Thank you for
cool.
joining us. We appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Theo Wellington. I'm standing here in a field in South Nashville with a bunch of really cool people.
Excellent.
So, Theo, I know that you have a bachelor's degree in astronomy from Case Western and that you've done a lot of public outreach and worked at the Adventure Science Center in Nashville. And now you are a member of the Bernard Seifert Astronomical Association there in Nashville. Where are you observing, and what kind of clouds do you see?
We do have some clouds, and we've had a little bit of peekaboo view. What it's doing, though, is it's slowly evaporating overhead, but from the west. And so it's excruciatingly painful to watch because we will eventually, I think, get a good view. Our patience is just being tested. So right now what we've got are sort of high clouds. We've got this big circle of light that keeps showing out from the clouds. But we can't quite get the moon yet. Maybe in 20 minutes or so we'll have blown off enough clouds to get it.
Well, that's interesting because sometimes your weather is similar to ours. And we also have possibly a live feed from Austin P in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is to the north of you.
Yes.
So maybe they might have a good view shortly as well. We're looking at the view from Lafayette, Louisiana, and we can see moonlight through the clouds, but we can't see much more than that. So, you know, this is difficult, and we wish it were better, but we have to deal with the clouds and the weather as we see it. But you know, you're there. Is there a big crowd there with you?
We've got mostly families. People brought their lawn chairs. They brought their blankets. I don't know. We might have 100 folks here, something like that.
Wow, 100.
I know we would have a lot more if it had been clear all day. It rained a lot actually during the day. And but everybody's kind of hopeful, and they've settled down. We do have your feed on inside the Nature Center. So we've got that, and otherwise people are just enjoying a nice Sunday evening. The temperature's nice. It's humid, but it's Tennessee, so that's okay.
So why do you think that eclipses are so fascinating to us human animals?
I think, you know, time was when we knew the sky was there every night, and it was a very constant thing. The same stars and the same patterns year after year. It was very familiar. And then these things would happen that were completely unfamiliar. I can only imagine what a primitive human being would have thought if all of a sudden the sun went out in the middle of the day. I mean, that had to be a totally scary thing. Luckily, it would always come back. But generally, you would never see more than one, and only one if you were lucky. Probably no one you ever knew had seen one. So those really get your attention. Lunar eclipses you would see more often, but even so, it's just a weird thing. And stuff like that is always bad. Comets have been bad. You know, shooting stars when they come in storms are bad. Anything that's different or changes in the sky. So it was always an omen, a sign that something was going to happen.
For me, it's a sign that I have to work on the weekends.
I would cheerfully chase this one. Apparently the weather is somewhat better to our west, but, you know, yeah, you've got work, and I still have my youngest is still in school, so he's got to get his homework done. All that stuff gets in the way, but oh well.
So you're a member of the International Dark Sky Association. Can you tell us about that organization and why dark skies might be important?
The IDA tries really hard to raise people's awareness about dark skies and about really how we're frittering it away, that it's totally unnecessary to waste money and energy lighting up space, which is really all we're doing. And when I was young and I could see the Milky Way from my backyard, I had this stupid tiny little telescope, but I could see a whole lot because you could actually see the night sky. And it's been a constant source of inspiration. You can talk to a lot of professional people, not necessarily astronomers, but doctors, scientists of all stripes, and say, what first got you interested in science? And they'll say, the night sky. I used to look out the window. And so I think when we spend all this time spinning our wheels to interest kids in STEM. And there are consistently two things that really inspire young people about science. One is dinosaurs, and we don't have any of those. And the other is space. That's easy. It's free. It's available to everyone every night. If you had a window that looked out over Niagara Falls, you would not paint it. And yet we have this beautiful window that opens to the infinite universe every night, and we paint it with light. So if instead we thought of it as that precious resource, that beautiful view, instead of, it's just a few astronomers that want to look out. And increasingly we've found out it's not actually good for our health to have lights on all the time. Certainly the other half of the ecosystem that works at night does not appreciate the lights on. And it doesn't really help your security, which is what a lot of people use it for. We fear the dark still. And so we turn on lights and we think it makes us safe. But I walk down my neighborhood at night and we've got all these lights on and everybody's got dark blinds on their windows. So there's something wrong with that. And we're just trying to call attention to that, to say, hey, you can save some money, we can look at the sky, and we can still inspire the next generation to do the same things.
Now, we're going to go back to the daytime sky when light pollution is not so much of an issue, but you're in Nashville, and so I'm going to ask you, what are your plans for August 21st, 2017?
My dream is to actually be sharing that day with probably several thousand of my closest friends. I live north of town in the smaller town of Goodlettsville. It's a wonderful small town that's on the edge of the city, so we get the city amenities, but it's a nice town. And I hope we can throw a really nice party at the local park, have everybody come out that's there. We're close enough to the center line that we're going to get all the people that can't fit into Hopkinsville, because not everybody's going to be able to get there. My house is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And the nice thing is I've got bathrooms, air conditioning, and maybe some good drinks as well.
So here we're actually talking about the total eclipse of the sun that's going to traverse the entire continental U.S. in August 21st, 2017, and totality will be it'll be total in Nashville, Tennessee, and at your house. And how many bedrooms do you have?
I actually have quite a few available now because most of my kids have gone. And no, seriously, I've got room. I've got. You can bring the camper and park it out front. I've got a couple acres, so yeah, we'll have a party. And leading up to that, though, there's a tremendous amount of work to be done with education, with helping the schools prepare the students, using it as a teachable moment. Lots of cool things that we can do with this, but all that work needs to go on in the next year and a half. So that on Eclipse Day, we've done all that, everybody's got their solar glasses, and we can just sit back and enjoy a cool party. Yeah, I hope somebody gets the view coming in off the ocean from Oregon. Wouldn't that be fun if we could sort of have a sequential party all the way across the U.S.?
That would be fantastic. Well, Theo, thank you so much for your time, and I really, really appreciate it. And I hope it does indeed clear up for us tonight, and
It's
I hope.
starting to peek out. I just heard an "oh wow" from somebody who looked.
Oh,
at the
great!
telescope.
That's
So great.
wonderful news. Thank you.
So, yeah, I hope it clears up for you too.
Thanks again,
Well,
Theo.
Thanks. Have a great evening.
Excellent. Mitzi, once again, another great interview that's we've got lined up all night tonight. That's from Theo Wellington, who's joining us from just outside, or just in, I guess, outside Nashville, Tennessee? That's correct.
Nashville, Tennessee.
One of the many guests joining us tonight as we broadcast live here from NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, trying to bring you live footage of tonight's total lunar eclipse. And I stress the word trying. We keep using as many feeds as we can, live feeds, as we scroll through the Twitter feed and see people asking us where the live feeds are. A lot of them are cloudy, and we heard a little bit right there from Theo, who mentioned that sounds like some of the students actually were getting a chance to see some of it.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like it's clearing up a bit in Nashville, and hopefully Lafayette might get a little bit of clear sky, so we might have a feed from them. Austin P is a little bit north of Nashville, so maybe we'll have a feed from them in half an hour or so.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep our fingers crossed. We've done a great job getting all these different science centers and universities and informal education providers across the country to help line up some video that we can stream with everybody on NASA television or on NASA Ustream around the world. And that segues into one of my social media questions that I have here. I have two, and I think this is a really, there's two of these, and so one of these ties into what we're doing. This question's from San Jose, Costa Rica. And so once again, we've got people all around the world who are joining us. Some of these are in Spanish, of which Dr. James Spann and Lauren will have to answer. This question is from @Alexander_Paul. Alexander is spelled a little differently for character limit, but my daughter asked me, how did the moon become a natural satellite?
Well, that's an interesting question, and there are still debates about that, but I believe that the current idea is that the moon and Earth kind of collided, and that the moon is a great part of what was the Earth at one time.
Right. That's some of the theories that I've seen. I used to do a lot of lunar-based workshops for the agency, for NASA. And so the condensation theory, the capture theory, the fission theory, the giant impact theory, which giant impact theory seems to be one that I think a lot of scientists kind of lean toward and use that as an idea. But there's definitely a lot of theories out there. And so it's a great question.
Excellent question. I mean, when the solar system was formed, there was a lot of debris that was circling around. And the natural gravitation of the debris causes it to coalesce together. So there's going to be a lot of collisions between bodies, and this is another reason why the moon is so well cratered. Earth would be too, but our atmosphere protects us from a lot of the debris that comes in. But in the early days of the solar system, both Earth and moon would have been impacted heavily by comets and asteroids that would have caused craters, some of which are no longer visible on Earth because of erosion, but we can still see them on the moon.
Absolutely. Yeah, weather patterns, geological activities on Earth impact and create and shape a lot of our natural terrain, but that's absent process on the moon to a point. I mean, in fact, another question I saw earlier, I'd have to scroll through to find it, unfortunately, and I will. If I find the question, I'll go back through and give it a shout out later for who asked it, but it was a question about, does the moon really have moonquakes?
During the Apollo days, they put seismographs on the moon, and there were some moonquakes that were detected. And so, yes, it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the moon is affected by tides just as the Earth is as well. So, moonquakes, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And let's see. Here's another one. This one is @Kev and Tams. Kevin and Tammy have combined to create their own little account here. How quaint and cute. Did Australia see this eclipse last night? And I chose this because it gives people the idea. Some people, you think you can see it all the time. It's, it's a timely thing, and so especially when we show the map, which we'll bring up here in just a second. So yeah, the question is, would Australia or other parts of the world see this eclipse last night?
Well, I don't believe this eclipse is visible in Australia at all. So the short answer to that question is no. then when we talk about last night, what time is it in Australia? I believe it's tomorrow in Australia.
I always love that.
So the short answer is no, Australia would not have seen it last night.
All right, excellent, thank you. And I'm scrolling through, let's see. This question is, we've been talking about perigee and apogee and the moon's orbit around the Earth. And so this will be our last question before we head to one of our next guests. And so this is a great question because there's several different answers you can provide for this. This one is at Zilixion. Zilixion, that's a hard one to say for me. He's using his question, hashtag Ask NASA. When does the moon leave perigee?
Well, perigee and apogee are simply moments in time when the moon will be at its closest approach, which would be perigee, or the farthest distance from Earth. That would be apogee. And it's just a moment in time because the moon is constantly moving. It's constantly orbiting. And so it's not going to stop there. So it's there and gone.
Yeah, constantly moving.
Now, the particular point in time, the exact time, I really don't know.
Okay, that's a great question.
Great question.
Perigee and apogee, like I said, it's constantly moving, roughly 28 days, 29 days for
a month.
Ooh, I've never heard that before, a month. I like that.
That's from planetarians.
Nice, a month. Yeah, roughly 28 days, about a month, so the moon completes a cycle orbiting the Earth roughly every month. Thanks. That's awesome. I'll write that down. Okay, so as we continue with our guest experts that are joining us throughout the United States as well as the world, we've had a guest joining us from Guatemala City. Our next guest is on the line right now, so let's check in and see. Hello, sir. Are you there? Are you joining us here at NASA Marshall?
David, are you there?
We're working on it. I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, good.
Excellent.
Just a little blip there.
Thank you. We're pleased to have you joining us tonight.
I'm glad to be here.
This is David Hostetter, is it not?
It is, yeah. Lafayette Science Museum, Lafayette, Louisiana. We're the ones with the cloud pictures.
But you're getting some very good cloud pictures, and you actually did have a little bit of the moon peeking through, so I'm hopeful, and as Theo Wellington from Nashville stated, we might actually get a little bit of clearing here, hopefully.
There's some possibility. We did get a nice view of the moon about 20, 25 minutes ago for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And as the moon gets higher in the sky, I'm hoping that we'll maybe see it break through the gaps in the clouds a little bit more. We've probably got about 60 to 75 people out in a park with us with some telescopes, and we're having a nice time with that.
That is great.
Yeah, that's wonderful, actually. The more people, better.
We're actually looking at your feed right now, and unfortunately our moon is gone, so your breaks have disappeared. But let me find out from you how you became interested in astronomy. Now, I know that you are very heavily involved in the planetarium there at the Science Museum. What is a planetarium? What's its purpose in a science museum?
The basic purpose of a planetarium is to be a source of information about the cosmos for our visitors. So we do a lot of planetarium programs, some live, some playback. We do them on a lot of different topics. It's more than just pointing out constellations. Today, for instance, this is still Sunday, right? Yeah. Today we had a program about sky watchers of Africa. We had one that is a live tour of the universe, and then another one that was about telescopes and how they work. So there are different programs that we do, and we are trying to help people understand what the universe is about and get a really modern understanding of the universe. Pointing out constellations is basically 16th century astronomy, and so we want people to start to understand what astronomers have discovered over the last 400 years or so since the telescope has been invented. And we have the planetarium, we have a meteorite exhibit that I curate, we have little mini exhibits, we've got a nice space exhibit, and we're building a public observatory. So we have a lot of different things that are going on.
Now, a topic, of course, near and dear to my heart is that you're putting together a solar observatory. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The public observatory that we're putting together has 2 domes. One of them will be devoted to the sun, and the other to basically everything else. The solar dome will have a couple of relatively small 80-millimeter telescopes in it, one for visible light and one for hydrogen alpha light, and they'll be mounted on a single equatorial mount. And we expect to be able to put imaging of the sun out on our website every clear day. The other observatory will be for nighttime use and will be fully robotic. We'll be able to control it automatically. And if we have to take pictures of something at 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody's going to have to be here. We can set it up, and it will do everything that it needs to do, including checking the weather, all done automatically. So it's it's going to be an interesting thing. It's a very new direction for us, and I think it's going to be very good. We've got most of the solar equipment sitting in our offices and tech areas right now, and I'm hoping to start assembly of a lot of that next month.
Excellent.
We're looking forward to it. I've been working on an observatory for the museum here since 1982, so I've been waiting for this for 33 years, and it's kind of cool to see it coming together finally.
So you're going to have a lot of students passing through there. This is a really difficult question for you. If you had a first grade student who wanted to know about lunar eclipses and what causes them, how would you explain it?
Well, first grade is pretty young. I have found that you can tell kids that age about phases and lunar motions and things like that, but there's a real difference between them being able to say that back and really understanding it. So I probably mostly tell them that the moon is going around the Earth, that the Earth has a shadow and sunlight just like they do, and when the moon goes into the Earth's shadow, we call it a lunar eclipse. Now, one of the things that I have to kind of judge in front of the audience there, depending on what types of questions they might have asked previously or things like that, there seems to be an unfortunate growing fear of even common celestial events these days. So I might tell them that eclipses are very pretty and completely harmless. And it's unfortunate that we have to tell people that the moon going through a shadow is harmless, but we have people that are really concerned about those things these days. I don't really understand why, but that would be something that I might feel like I have to tell kids.
So I guess you could actually demonstrate shadows with, just a light and having people walk through and block the light and cast a shadow. And is that the sort of thing you might do?
We might well do that. On the other hand, in a planetarium that's filled with seats, that can be kind of tough to do. But one of the things we have that's kind of nice is a spotlight in the back of the planetarium and ping pong balls on little handles. We can hand out the ping pong balls and turn on the bright light to be the sun, and as the kids let the ping pong ball go around them, they become the Earth, and the phases of the moon show up on the ping pong ball, and when the ping pong ball goes into their shadow, they're looking at an eclipse. So we do that. And that's, in fact, pretty much our standard way of teaching phases to elementary school kids, is to let them see the phases on the ping pong balls.
I might have to try that sometime.
It's pretty cool. And if you have a light bulb that's right in front of you and turn out the lights and let the ping pong ball go around the light bulb, the audience will see the phases of Venus.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. I used to work in the NASA Education Office for years and actually have done that activity several times. NASA has a great lesson plan online that you can find. I don't think it's in NASA's Moon Educator Guide, but yeah, great opportunity using the lamp and the reflective kind of ping pong ball. So something that's if
really
it's the
bright
foam, it kind of absorbs the light, but well, it's not pyrene, but definitely like a ping pong. It's a plastic that reflects light a lot more. That's a great activity. That's wonderful.
Yeah, the ping pong balls work pretty well, and of course, part of the problem is when you turn on that nice bright spotlight in the 40-foot planetarium, the planetarium does get lighted up, so it reduces the contrast on the ping pong ball, but you can still see the phases without too much trouble.
That's great. I'm really glad you told us that.
I wish I could claim it was my idea, but I think it's done by a lot of people. I forget where I got the idea, but it wasn't mine original.
Well,
but
whenever Oh my goodness, we have a view of the moon in eclipse from Adler in Chicago. Wow, this is fantastic. The moon is about half eclipsed, roughly, a little bit less than half, and I don't know whether they have many clouds, but it doesn't look extremely clear. But you know, hey, it's better than nothing. Dave, what kinds of questions would students typically ask you about eclipses?
Most of them are pretty basic. What are eclipses? How do they happen? How often do they happen? When's the next one? With a lunar eclipse, they want to know why it turns red. So those are the basics.
And so what's significant to you about this date, August 21st, 2017? And where are you going to be?
That's when the next total solar eclipse will cross the United States. So I'm looking forward to it. I have a stepdaughter who lives about 20 miles out of the path of totality. So I suspect that I will be visiting her. And my telescope and I, and hopefully my wife, will go also, but we'll visit her perhaps. And whether I will sleep on the couch or my wife or her dog will get the couch, I'm not real sure. But somebody will be sleeping there, and I hope that we'll have nice weather so I can take my telescope into the eclipse path.
Well, that sounds fantastic, and I'm sure you'll be doing lots of activities with the students there at the Lafayette Science Museum.
We'll set up
an
eclipse party before I leave, yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dave, and thank you for the live feed. We really appreciate the view of clouds.
Well, you know, I was hoping for better weather, but you never know. We're going to be here until at least 10 o'clock or so Central Time, so unless it rains or something, we'll probably bail out when we have to close the dome and take in the telescopes if it's raining. But, you know, you may see it again. We'll just have to kind of play it by ear.
Well, thank you very much once again.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting us do it.
Yeah, that was great. Another great guest joining us. So far, a nice steady stream of guests. We'll be hopefully seeing some of their live feeds more throughout the night as we're finally able to get a little break in the clouds, a break in the weather actually, where we're able to see the live feed here from Adler in Chicago, Illinois, providing one of the live feeds. As I scrolled through our Twitter account, and I see a lot of people are asking obviously about the feeds and where are some feeds, and so we've got them set up all over the place. However, this is one of the first ones that we're able to actually kind of get to see a little bit of the moon. But as I scroll through the Twitter feeds, I see that it's clear in Phoenix. People are tweeting us and saying, you know, they appreciate us doing this webcast even though we're not able to give a live feed, or at least we weren't for the first hour, but that people in Phoenix, that it's clear in Phoenix, that Mexico is able right now to see the lunar eclipse, that the UK, in certain parts of UK, it's clear there, as well as northern Indiana, which will kind of blend in here with northern Illinois. Poland is getting a good viewing right now, so we're getting people all around the world tweeting in and telling us that they're able to see this feed. So we appreciate them letting us know. A lot of them are also posting pictures on our Twitter account. And so if you want to go on our Twitter account, you can tweet your questions to us. Our social media team is in our conference room here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center, and they're answering as many questions as fast as their furious little fingers will go. Answering questions, so you can tweet your questions, you can engage other viewers and other tweeters and start your own conversation, as well as see some of these really great images. I'm scrolling through and seeing image after image, which is really cool. This is a great one here. At Petchery has got a great 8:30 local time. This was about 15 minutes ago, showing from Kingston, Jamaica, a great photo of the eclipse as it's occurring and starting to happen. So that's Emma Lewis at Petchery. We appreciate that. Appreciate everyone who's providing these images. And so let's keep the show moving along as we have more guests joining us live throughout the country tonight as we talk total lunar eclipse. And so our next guest hopefully is on right now. Let's see. Hello, are you there? Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, thank you for joining us tonight here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. If you would please, could you tell our audience your name, your title, and your responsibilities there at NASA Johnson?
My name is Kim Willis, and I work at the NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. And my title is I'm the manager of astromaterials curation. I work for a contractor on the Jacobs Jets contract, and I actually work for Oceaneering Space Systems. My responsibility is to, we have a group there at Johnson Space Center who we make sure we take care of, keep clean, and get astromaterials out to scientists all over the world. And those astromaterials include, of course, rocks that were returned from the moon.
Excellent. And the name of that lab?
Well, there's several labs. One is, we call it the Pristine Sample Laboratory, PSL. Not very exciting, but that's what it is. And we have a meteorite lab where we collect meteorites from Antarctica. And you probably heard Judy Alton earlier. She's the curator for Genesis. And we also have a stardust lab, which is a lab where we curate and take care of samples from comets.
Excellent. That's so a lot going on, and we're very fortunate that we have so many guests from the Johnson Space Center join us, especially in those various labs. You guys, once again, have a lot of history involved with lunar research and lunar science, and not only history, but also future uses. And so we were talking a little bit about that with Judy, but from what I understand as the manager, so what are some of the roles you play in helping not only scientists get some of this lunar data, but also maybe EPO content?
Well, in terms of helping scientists, my job is to remove the roadblocks for people who are actually working in the lab. For example, if they need a computer so they can do things more efficiently, it's my job to make sure that they get that. It's my job to communicate with them. I also sort of serve as liaison between my staff and NASA to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And in terms of EPO, since when I first started working there, I did work in the lunar lab. And so I like to work with Suzanne a lot, which you'll be listening to later. And that's actually one of the best part of my job, is going out and sharing with people outside of what we call outside of the fence at JSC, all the cool things that we do.
Excellent. That's wonderful. It sounds great. It is a very cool job. I see a lot of your all's photos. Putting on the bunny suits and being in the lab, not only dealing with the lunar samples, but as you mentioned, as we see in this picture here, you've got one of the lunar discs, which I actually have here at our broadcast desk. We're going to break those out later. But it's also the meteorite samples that you get. I know it's a very big, exciting day when those meteorite samples come in once or twice a year.
Yes, actually they usually come in once a year. Last year we had a problem at the dock and we actually couldn't bring them in. So this year we had 2 years worth of meteorites that came in. Yes, it's very exciting. We have scientists that go out into the field, as it were. They go during our winter, but it's during summer in Antarctica, and they go out and collect these meteorites and bring them back to us at Johnson.
Yes, absolutely. You guys do great work and great job. And so if we're talking about the eclipse and the lunar eclipse, what's one of the first memories you remember of a lunar eclipse? And was that something that interested you into pursuing this career field?
Oh, absolutely. I can't remember the first time I looked at a lunar eclipse because I was very young. I can tell you I was in elementary school in San Antonio when I decided, I got a telescope. That's what I asked for Christmas. And I studied, for the first time I could see like the mountains on the moon, or what they call the mountain. It's actually a product of impacts. But so I could look at the moon. I could see the rings of Saturn. I could see Jupiter and the 4 Galilean satellites. And and of course pull out my kid and now my grandkids out to see lunar eclipses.
Wonderful. And if you're watching our stream live there in Houston, Texas at the Johnson Space Center, we're streaming now a feed. Mitzi, this feed's coming in from Austin Peay State University, another one of our partners tonight, able to actually break through the clouds.
Yeah, they're actually in Clarksville, Tennessee, just north of Nashville, northeast, I believe. And I got word from one of my colleagues that they have clouds, but obviously they're able to see through the clouds a little bit, so they're not as thick as they are here in Huntsville, and maybe things might get a little bit better later.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have this feed and be able to provide this for all our viewers joining us around the globe as we bring you a live coverage of the 2015 total lunar eclipse, and we're joined on the phone by Kim Willis, who works at the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. She's the manager of the Astromaterials Curation Group, and so it's wonderful to have some of them joining us tonight. Kim, are you inside? Are you outside? Are you planning to watch the eclipse tonight, or is it too cloudy there for you?
I am inside. I've gone out a couple of times because I was sort of optimistic that the clouds would clear, but unfortunately they have not.
Yeah, and we actually have been outside all night tonight, but we're very fortunate to have these feeds. Hopefully they're clearing up and getting more clear as the night goes on. And so another question for you, we've heard a lot about, with all these guest experts that are joining us throughout the world tonight, that work at science centers and museums and planetariums. They're always working with kids. They have these great social media pages, and they're always highlighting and promoting some of the events that go on to encourage STEM. And so 2 questions is, how do you guys reach out and promote what you all do to the general audience beyond the typical scientists?
One of the ways that we promote what we do is Paige Graff is one of our education team members, and she will put on these, it's not a webcast, but she'll have one of the scientists from our groups from JSC, and they will talk about things they do. You know, an example of one is one works with Mars Curiosity rover. And so schools would sign up, and they would receive these feeds and have an opportunity to actually ask questions of a scientist working on Mars Curiosity. So Paige has done that with several people. Suzanne goes out and participates in what they call NASA Space Science Days. And, you know, those are great fun because we get to bring out a lot of our samples. We have a lunar sample that we're allowed to take out, and of course the discs that you mentioned. And as I said, it's a real one-on-one live interaction with the public, and it's great fun.
Absolutely. And as we near the end of our interview for tonight, what advice would you give to students who want to follow your career path or something similar in the STEM fields? What's some advice that you would give, or something that maybe you experienced that really helped you along the way?
The advice I'd have is always ask questions. Don't worry about if it's a smart question or if it'll make you look dumb, because trust me, other people will be wondering about that. Take as much math and science as you can, but you know, understand all your courses are important, and persevere, because you'll have disappointments along the way, and you'll probably have some people that say, you know, well, you know, you can't be an astronaut because you're a woman or something, which is something I heard when I was young. And of course now we have women astronauts. So I would say be curious, be persistent, and have fun.
I agree with everything you said. That's great advice, and I will actually continue to follow that myself. And so I really appreciate you joining us, Kim. Thank you once again, and I look forward to working with you and talking to you in the future.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Kim Willis, who works at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, as the manager of the Astromaterials Curation Group. And so wonderful to have so many guest experts joining us tonight. I think we're maybe on our 5th or 6th interview, maybe 8th or 9th interview. We got several more throughout the night, as we planned up to almost 4 hours of live streaming on NASA television and NASA Ustream of the 2015 total lunar eclipse. And so we appreciate Kim joining us as we see our live feed here from Austin Peay State University, just north of Nashville, in Nashville, Tennessee. And so we're thankful that they are able to provide a live feed, as a lot of our partners and formal science education providers have been joining us tonight. We have feeds from all across the country. However, most of them are clouded out, unfortunately, as we are here. And so we're very fortunate. We keep our fingers crossed. You can see the eclipse is in full effect. Things are happening out there, and so it's great to have them involved. And so want to remind everybody watching our stream tonight that as you can see the eclipse happening, you can also participate in the online social media conversation. It's one thing that NASA does very well and we take great pride in, is our social media engagement and interactivity, and tonight's event and broadcast is no exception. And so you can tweet your questions to @NASA_Marshall, You can use the word, the hashtag #AskNASA. You send your questions in to us, and we will answer them, as we've been doing all night, as our one of our guests here tonight is actually helping all night long. Shannon Rittinger is joining us live in the studio to give us a social media breakdown and update. Shannon, hello, welcome back.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Mitzi. Thanks so much. We are just getting so many wonderful, great questions on the NASA Marshall social media accounts. And just to remind everyone, the hashtag we're using is #AskNASA. Our Twitter account is @NASA_Marshall. You can also go over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/NASA Marshall. We want to see your pictures, and we would love to repost those on our social accounts, especially if you're in somewhere where you can actually see the eclipse and you've got a good view of it. Chris, that's the one thing that we're really getting a lot of. People are, a little bit frustrated in the areas that they're in. It's very cloudy and they can't see the eclipse. So we just want to encourage them to continue to stay tuned, because now we do have the feed coming through, and then we hope to have a feed later from maybe California, I think, Chris?
Yes, the Griffith Observatory, the famed Griffith Observatory overlooking Los Angeles, California.
Yes, okay, so great. So everybody please just stay tuned to our Ustream feed. We do have a few questions that we want to ask. So this one comes from @DonnieWelchPoet, and his question is, what is the difference between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse?
Oh, I guess that's me.
That would be you. Thanks, Mitzi.
The difference between a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse is that the moon is in a different position. For a lunar eclipse, the moon has to be full. So it has to be opposite, the Earth has to be in between the moon and the sun. And for a solar eclipse, the moon is in between the Earth and the sun. So the sun shines on the moon, and the moon shadow shines on Earth. For the lunar eclipse, the sun shines on Earth, and Earth's shadow shines on the moon. So a solar eclipse is a new moon. That's when basically we don't see the moon in the sky, so we call it new. And the full moon is when you can have a total lunar eclipse.
Okay, great. Great answer. Thank you, Mitzi. Okay, and this question comes from 8-year-old Marcus. And his aunt actually sent this question at Miss5Elements on Twitter. And she says, my nephew, 8-year-old Marcus, wants to know what makes the moon red.
Well, the moon is actually not red, but the light that's shining on Earth is being kind of absorbed. It's actually being scattered by the Earth's atmosphere, and so the blue light is being filtered out. Most of the light's being filtered out, or most of the colors are being filtered out, except the red light. The red light can pass through Earth's atmosphere where it can shine on the moon. The moon doesn't actually shine by its own light, it reflects light, so it reflects back that reddish light, and that's why it appears to be red during a lunar eclipse.
Okay, thanks, Mitzi. And we want to also tell Marcus we're really glad that he is watching our coverage of this, and we think it's really great that we've gotten so many tweets and messages from kids all over, and we're just really glad that you're staying up and staying with us throughout our eclipse coverage. So do we have time for one more question, I think?
Yes, absolutely. I would, in fact, maybe a few more if you've got time.
Okay, and this is from @CTYMon. And they want to know, is it true the moon affects our oceans? And if so, how?
So this will be referencing the tides.
Yeah, well, the moon is a solid body, and it has mass, it has stuff, and so it pulls on Earth. And when it is on one side or the other, it pulls on different parts of Earth. It pulls on the solid parts as well as on the water. And so it can pull the water towards it, causing either low tides or high tides, depending on the position of the moon and where you happen to be on Earth at that particular time. So it's basically, it's a gravitational effect that's caused by the moon in its orbit around Earth. And basically Earth does pretty much the same thing to the moon.
Okay, thanks, Mitzi. And a lot of folks actually have been asking that, so that was a really great explanation. Okay, and so the last one we have, this is from Ann on Twitter at SHLFanatic, and she says, "Hey, NASA Marshall, if people were on the moon, like in a moon colony, would this eclipse have an effect on them?"
It would certainly have a psychological effect on them, because they would see essentially a solar eclipse. The sun would be eclipsed, and by the way, I believe we are just about at the beginning of the total eclipse, which was predicted to be at 9/11 Central Daylight Time, and it's about that. And our feed from Austin P does show that the moon is disappearing from view, and if they can adjust their brightness contrast, we may be able to see the moon looking reddish. But if you have a clear view of the sky, if it's not cloudy, and you haven't found the moon up until now, you may not be able to because it has entered the umbral part of Earth's shadow and it's very dark. And what was that question I was answering?
That question, well, you answered it very well. It was if people were on the moon, would this eclipse have an effect on them?
And again,
and
it would definitely have that psychological effect. They would see a dark disk of Earth surrounded by sort of sunsets, surrounded by red, a reddish tinge all around the disk of the Earth, an annulus of sorts.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mitzi. Thank you, Chris. And I'm going to go back and answer some more questions. And just as a reminder, everyone can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/NASA Marshall. We're going to have a photo contest starting real soon where you can upload your photos of the eclipse. And we will pick the best ones, and they will air on different NASA social mediums. So please do that. We want to see them. And thank you all very much. And I'll be back in about an hour.
That's wonderful. Shannon, thank you very much for joining us all night tonight. Once again, spending your weekend evenings with us here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. That's Shannon Rittinger, one of our public affairs officers here at NASA Marshall in Huntsville, Alabama. One of our dedicated and excited crew that's joining us working behind the scenes to provide this live feed, of which we're excited to finally have seen some of the eclipse happening, Mitzi. I know we made it through the first hour, hoping that we've got more than clouds, and finally, as we've rolled on past the 9 o'clock, we've gotten to see a little bit, and so that's one great thing. We got a live feed here. This one's from Austin P. Looks like we're having a little bit of clarity issues, perhaps, with that one.
Yeah, it looks a little bit hazy, fuzzy.
However, as we mentioned, with all the people, and gosh, social media is so great. It really connects a lot of us together. And so we mentioned earlier some of the places around the country that are getting really good, clear shots, such as this shot right here as the eclipse was occurring. And if I zoom back out, this one was from @Beetlemarda in Lisbon, Portugal, as the eclipse was happening. And so Portugal was getting a good view, as well as Brazil, Colombia, Nigeria. We've got fans that have been tweeting in all night tonight, showing these images that we're able to see as the moon's gone through an eclipse. And so that's really exciting to see that. Back to Austin P, as it looks like, Mitzi, as I'll bring up another image real quick of how the moon's been eclipsing, but can you describe to our viewers right now what we're seeing, what we're not seeing?
We're not seeing the total eclipse of the moon, because as the moon moves into the umbra, then the moon becomes very, very dark. And so if a telescope and a camera has been focused on the moon with a reasonably bright light, then the exposure time basically has to change in order to see the moon, the full moon, eclipsed in shadow. So you have to change a couple of things, and I suspect that the people at Austin P are trying to do that right now. And actually, do we have Dr. Alan Smith on the phone from Austin P right now? Maybe we can ask him what's going on up there in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Well, we are under a lot of cloud still, although it's starting to clear. We're trying to adjust the camera. The problem is this is the first night we've actually had it on the sky other than the test, and so we're still learning all the controls on this particular camera.
Well, we encourage you to keep at it. We appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah,
Well,
we're actually seeing a little bit of an image there now, but it's still not. I mean, it's not totally dark, but it's getting better. So there at Austin P in Clarksville, you're right about on the border between Kentucky and Tennessee. Is that right?
That is correct. We're about, the campus observatory is about, maybe 5 miles or 6 miles from Kentucky. And so, we're close.
And so there, the path of totality of that solar eclipse, pardon me, that's coming up in 2017 is going to go right through your university?
Yes, it will. We're about 10 miles, 15 miles off the center line of the total eclipse. So we'll have, I think we miss 15 seconds of totality compared to the maximum spot.
Okay, so that's another place I could go to observe. Why are eclipses interesting to you in general?
Probably from a fascination point of view and just the sky lore, but the shadow effects and things. I mean, I've never seen a total solar eclipse yet. This is the one I've been waiting for. So I'll be actually approaching that as an amateur astronomer, just waiting to look at it. We are looking at having a couple of experiments set up here, though, working with the National Solar Observatory. Hopefully, we'll be setting up some of their equipment here.
That sounds great, Alan. And what kind of science would you do for a solar eclipse?
We're looking at part of the inner, the corona time series imaging of the inner corona.
And the inner corona is the topmost layer of the sun's atmosphere, right?
Right, the outermost layer of the sun's atmosphere. And so we'll be looking at the interior part of that. And really the only time you can see that is during a total solar eclipse, unless you happen to be in space and have a coronagraph. But for the ground-based observatories, the only time you can really see that is during a total solar eclipse.
But as I understand it, the coronagraphs on the space-based telescopes don't actually see the inner corona.
Oh, well, you would know better than I, since you actually study that stuff. I look at mere, more distant stars generally.
Yeah, I think the only way to see the inner corona is during a solar eclipse. So that is a good reason to do the science at that time. So here we have this lunar eclipse that we're all hoping to see.
Right.
What causes the color of a lunar eclipse?
The color is caused by the Earth's atmosphere filtering out all of the blue, green, yellow, and orange light, and the only light really passing through the atmosphere then is the bottom end of the orange and the red light that makes it through the Earth's atmosphere to actually illuminate the surface of the moon. And so it'll appear red if you're off to the side.
Okay, so how would you explain the difference between a lunar and a solar eclipse?
Let me put you on mute here. Okay, the lunar eclipse is when the Earth passes between the sun and the moon, and the Earth's shadow is being cast onto the lunar surface, so it appears to disappear. The solar eclipse is when the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, and so we see, from the Earth's point of view, we see the sun blocked out by the moon.
Okay.
And it's a much rarer event just because the size of the shadow spot cast by the moon on the Earth is much smaller.
So you're much less likely to see the solar eclipse simply because the shadow is smaller.
Yes, yes.
Now, what is your research? You're more interested in white dwarf stars, is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, what's a white dwarf?
A white dwarf is essentially the core of what used to be a lower mass main sequence star after it's lived its life and blown its atmosphere off through the planetary nebula phase. And the white dwarf is the core that's left over it's hot, or it starts hot, and it's basically the fusion products, the helium or carbon, oxygen mostly, and it's just slowly cooling. And for my actual scientific research, I like the cool ones because those are remnants of the oldest stars in the galaxy that did not explode as supernovas. And so we can use those to date the age of the galactic disk and look at stellar evolution in the galaxy. And then my second research area is looking at the hottest white dwarfs we can find that are down into the stable range, and we use those as calibration targets or calibration sources for some of these large sky surveys that are on the sky now, like the Torque Energy Survey and the upcoming Large Synoptic Survey Telescope.
Okay, you were talking about the main sequence. So our sun is actually on the main sequence. Will our sun end up like a white dwarf?
It will eventually, yes, in about another 5 billion or so more years on the main sequence, and then 1 to 2 billion years of post-main sequence evolution. So in about 6 to 7 billion years, we'll be probably left as a very hot white dwarf.
So you're studying the future of our sun.
Yes, in a sense, yes, I am.
In a sense.
In a sense, yes. Hopefully I won't live long enough to see it, but you never know. With advances in modern medicine, it's hard to tell.
But 1 billion years is a long time.
Yes, it is. It is an extremely long time.
So, Alan, do you have any students there hoping to observe this eclipse with you?
I have two students plus their, no, 4 students plus their significant others plus, let me recount. I have 5 students. Plus a couple of their significant others, and Dr. Spencer Buckner, who's the other astronomer here at Austin P with us.
And do they have any research interests in eclipses per se, or is this as an amateur astronomer type of an activity for them?
This is an amateur astronomer type of activity for most of these kids. 2 of them are in my general introductory astronomy class this semester. And 3 of them are actually in a photometry class that I'm teaching. And the conspicuously absent people are Dr. Buckner's astrophotography students who actually had an assignment to come out and photograph it.
Perhaps they knew it was going to be cloudy.
Yeah, but with the clouds, I think he canceled that out because of the clouds for them.
Well, Dr. Alan Smith, I would like to thank you very much for being with us this evening and helping to supply us with a feed from Austin P University in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Well, you're very welcome, and I've got a spare bed in the bedroom for you for the 2017 solar eclipse.
I haven't decided where I'm going to be yet.
Well, if you come this way, we've got a place for you.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good one.
You too.
Wonderful. Excellent. Another great interview all night tonight. J. Alan Smith from Austin P State University. And have you known him for a while? Mitzi, is this another one of your longtime friends?
Yes.
That's great. That's what we need. This is one reason why, for our viewers at home, we've been planning this for several months. And so as we work and have meetings every other week or so, Mitzi's got this great long list. I had a few people that were provided, mostly from the Johnson Space Center, and then one guest joining us from Ames. But Mitzi, being the scientist, I work in the newsroom and in education, so Mitzi has all these great science connections, astronomers and scientists and physicists all around the country, some that work with NASA or are retired, and others that work at various science centers and planetariums and world-renowned scientists. And so it's really an all-star list you've got lined up tonight.
Yes, Alan Smith and I were students at the Florida Institute of Technology in Melbourne, Florida. We were actually the youngest students on the campus.
It was just like last year.
Yeah, last year.
FIT, I worked at the Kennedy Space Center for several years, and so great school. And I actually didn't know that was where one of your degrees was from, so wow, that's really excellent. Tough school, and it's really nice you got those connections. And so once again, we've got our live feed here from Austin P State University of tonight's total lunar eclipse, and it's great to have finally a live feed that's not cloudy. I know our first several hours of at least an hour-ish of our broadcast, we were having trouble only because we can't control the weather. We definitely provide a lot of support and great benefits to not only America taxpayers, but also the world, but we can't control the weather. And so we're very fortunate that it has cleared and we're able to see that actually the moon is in an eclipse. And then another thing I was given that there were some issues with, sorry for the network issues, we have seem to be some kind of technical difficulties, especially people who are east of the Mississippi. This is the Mississippi River in the United States. And so the clouds were the first part of the issue that was affecting everybody. And then now technical issues, and it could be just from the size of the audience that we have joining us online tonight on NASA Ustream. This, we do a lot of different events, some that highlight the work we do at NASA Marshall, some that highlight the work we do at NASA as an agency, and some of them are global events and global activities, such as the Perseid meteor shower we did a few weeks ago, which was phenomenal. We had Dr. Bill Cook on, as well as some other of his staff. And of course tonight's total lunar eclipse, and we've got viewers once again as I scroll through our NASA Marshall feed. Pictures and images and content that's coming around, that's coming in from Palestine, Newfoundland, Puerto Rico, Cleveland, Bahrain, New Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Nigeria, Poland, Indiana, Phoenix. These are all people who are coming in and sending us pictures and images. So a lot of people are able to see, these images. And so the technical issues, something to do with the provider outside our network. And so hopefully that gets straightened up for everybody else who's able to see some of the feeds. But we're glad that there's at least some that we can provide right now, as well as all our guests that are joining us and our social media engagement. And so if you are getting these images, if you're able to send some of the images, I've seen a few. I'll call up a couple here on Twitter in just a moment, where people are taking photos of the total lunar eclipse and they're tagging them with hashtag #SuperBloodMoon, and then they're submitting them, or they're going to submit them, into our photo contest for tonight. Starting tonight, opens at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, which I believe has passed, I think. And so you can start uploading one photo per user, and then we, as an agency and a staff in the newsroom and social media teams, not only here at NASA Marshall, but also our colleagues at NASA Ames Research Center, at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., as well as the Goddard Space Flight Center, and I believe I've named all of them off, are going to go through the rest of the night and tomorrow. We're going to choose and narrow down, I expect, thousands of photos from our viewers. We're going to narrow down the best ones. We're going to create a gallery, and we'll let you, the viewer at home, vote on which ones you think are the favorites. And so we'll take those and post them on NASA social media. So make sure you're involved in that. If you want to get involved and submit a photo, I've seen a lot of photos on our Twitter account. If you've got a photo of the lunar eclipse you want to submit, if you go to our Facebook account, go to NASA Marshall Facebook account, and you can click on the tab at the top part of the page on NASA Marshall Facebook account. It's across the tabs where you have photos and pictures and timeline and albums, and right there is there'll be a photo, there'll be a tab for hashtag #SuperBloodMoon. You can click on that link. It'll take you to a NASA headquarters link where you can submit your photo. So one way for you to engage in tonight's total lunar eclipse is through your photo submission. The other is through all the tweets that we're getting all night tonight, as you've heard Shannon Ridinger give us a great social media update of all the people that are asking questions, that are ranging from kids. Mitzi, we got lots of kids that are asking questions. A lot of adults are asking questions, people all around the world, and that really goes to show the scope and reach of these kind of events. People are they're inspired, they're engaged. A lot of them want to know scientific information because maybe they're studying some kind of STEM-based concept, and some may not have that kind of training. And so it really shows the broad audience we reach.
And actually, we have an institution here in Huntsville, the Space and Rocket Center, and for events such as this, they typically will host a viewing for either a transit of Venus or a partial solar eclipse, or tonight for the lunar eclipse. And the Von Braun Astronomical Society has been set up there for over an hour in the cloudy skies. And I just got word that they had over 100 people out there, and no breaks in the clouds. So the crowd there is beginning to thin a bit. But even when the weather is not perfect, it looks like people are really interested in space. And we really hope to inspire folks to study science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and to replace me when I'm ready to retire.
That's going to be quite impossible. How can we possibly replace you? But I'm sure you are looking forward to retirement. But you've got a long time to go. You just said you were in graduate school at FIT like last year.
Oh, that was undergraduate school. The year before last.
2 years ago. 2-3 years ago. Yeah, you're right. It's a broad range that we reach and trying to encourage a lot of people to get involved in STEM. And that's one of my favorite parts. Is it's great to have all these people who are asking questions online all night tonight as I scroll through. That some are very specific and high level, and some are just showing their interest. Some people are just giving us shout outs. A lot of people, I actually took a few down as we went through here. We got some people at Wendy Lopez. Her and her boys are enjoying the feed for where they're at. I think they weren't able to see the eclipse, and so that's one of the things we like to provide is an opportunity for everybody to see as well as learn a little bit about NASA, what we do, our upcoming events. You talked about the United States Space and Rocket Center, which is the official visitor center for NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. It's the #1 tourist attraction in the state of Alabama, and it is just ripe with NASA history, Apollo and shuttle, and so many programs throughout our 50 years of NASA, and so a lot of different content. In fact, I think they're over there tonight doing the same thing that a lot of people are doing, which is setting up with their telescopes and having some kind of social event. Usually the Space and Rocket Center will partner with the Von Braun Astronomical Society, and they're probably doing that right now. I believe they are.
They are doing that right now. The crowd is beginning to thin out a little bit as everyone else has been having bad weather here in Huntsville. It's been cloudy, misting rain occasionally, and we haven't even been getting much of an opportunity to view little glimpses of the moon, in eclipse or not, during the evening.
Yeah, we are inside here in Huntsville, Alabama, which is North Alabama. It's been cloudy outside. We actually have cameras here that are set up on top of what we affectionately refer to as the Alamo. It's one of my favorite acronyms for NASA. NASA always uses acronyms all across the agency, and Alamo stands for our Automated Lunar and Meteor Observatory, and it's small little sets of planetariums, I guess you would call them, or telescopes and cameras.
Telescopes, cameras, observatory, and it actually used to be the Marshall Space Flight Center Solar Vector Magnetograph.
I was writing that down, see if that came into something.
No, unfortunately we never came up with a good acronym for it. But that was set up in the early 80s, and about roughly 10 years ago, the Solar Vector Magnetograph was moved to the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and Bill Cook and Rob Suggs took over the facility and turned it into a different type of observatory.
Absolutely, and we use that. We've got some images we might show later. We've been great to have some of this feeds all night tonight. Here's one of the images that we've got from one of our viewers tonight of the solar lunar eclipse. I'm sorry, the total lunar eclipse. Total lunar eclipse. Lots of images that are coming in on our Twitter account at @NASA_Marshall. So feel free to send your photos in for our photo contest, or just share them with us on our Twitter account. This is a global participation. We got people from all around the world that are posting photos and images. And so feel free to be involved with that as we continue to bring you some live feeds. We've got live feeds from all around the country. Some have been cloudy. Hopefully some of them are starting to clear up. And so earlier we saw the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, Illinois. It had a good feed, and so we're hoping that we'll get a feed from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, California, the famed Griffith Observatory, as well as Lafayette Science Museum and the Fernbank Science Center. And so while we do that and we set up our feeds, we've got some guests joining us that are live on the telephone. And so the next guest right now, let's check in and see. Hello, Miss Foxworth, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing great. It's very, very cloudy here, though.
In Houston, Texas, it's cloudy. We heard from some of the other people the same situation. And so if you would please take a moment to explain to our audience your name, your title, and your role at NASA Johnson Space Flight Center.
I am in JSC. I'm with ARES, Astromaterials Research and Exploration Science, and I am with the Communication and Outreach Specialist. I help do the lunar and meteorite discs for educators. I help get them certified and find people in their area who can certify them so that they can borrow these wonderful discs and take them into their classrooms.
That is demanding and rewarding work, as Mitzi and I actually have some of the discs right here, some props we have. This is from the Education Office, the Academic Affairs Office here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. And these are discs that, as you were talking about, that educators at schools and museums, science centers, and formal education providers have access to these kind of discs. Mine is a meteorite sample. Oh, excellent, thank you. Mine is a meteorite sample, the one I'm holding right now. And I'll switch and actually hold another one so you can see what one of the lunar samples. I'll let Mitzi hold that one. And this one is a lunar sample. And so as you're talking about working with these discs for educational and public outreach, these are your discs, and how do you guys use them for your outreach?
What we do is we take them and we show them to students so students can learn about the 6 different types of meteorites that there are. They discover different activities on how they impact the Earth, how they make craters. We show teachers how to bring them in so that they can use them with the next generation science standards and with their own curriculum. The lunar one has 6 different types. It has 3 different soils and 3 different rock samples, the anorthosite, the basalt, and then your breccia rocks that are in there. And it lets students see and hold these national treasures and really get a good look at them. And then they can compare that with their different studies that they do in school. And otherwise, you'd have to go to a museum that had a sample, and there's not very many around that do. Some do, but they would specifically have to go find a place that had these lunar rocks or these meteorites. And this allows the teachers to go ahead and bring them into their classroom without having to go on those field trips.
And as I hold these and I've shown to people, are these in, they're encased in a polymer or a
lucite.
A lucite.
They're 6-inch lucite discs, so they're pretty durable for the students to be able to hold. They can look at them underneath dissecting microscopes. They can use hand lenses to get a good up-close look of them. So they're very durable for the students to be able to hold.
And how many discs do you guys deal with? And you ship them out? Is it free of charge? Is there a cost? Is there a training?
It is free of charge. Teachers and museum and library workers, they need to be able to attend one of our certification workshops where they become certified, they get a certificate, and then they can request to borrow the rocks up to 2 weeks so they can get 1 disc or both discs, and they get them for 2 weeks free of charge. We mail them to them, they mail them back to us, and whenever they get these, they also get curriculum to go along with it. So it's kind of a good deal package that they get. And the certification workshops, those are all free as well. So if anyone's interested in becoming lunar and meteorite certified, they can contact any education specialist at any one of the 10 NASA centers, and they can request to see when these workshops are going to be held. And they can go to our website at ares.jsc.nasa.gov. That's ares.jsc.nasa.gov. They can look under education, and they can contact us specifically if they want us to put them in contact with someone that's having an upcoming workshop.
Those are a lot of fun. I've done a lot of those workshops, which is the reason why I have these lunar samples right here. I'm certified to carry these things around. In fact, when I'm done with the broadcast tonight, I have to take them back to NASA security here on center and have to lock them up. It's they have to stay with me at all times, everywhere I go. There's a whole big list of rules and regulations because, as you know, but our viewers may not know, these are national treasures that are considered priceless.
They are priceless. National treasures that are priceless, and if we can bring these in for our students to see, they have so much more of an appreciation whenever it comes time for them to learn about lunar phases in school or why there's impact craters and what they do. Students have a more, they have that sense of appreciation of the men and women, you know, that curate these things and have them.
Yeah, you've got a great job. It's wonderful. Once again, you, Kim Willis, and Judy Alton, all three joining us from NASA's Johnson Space Flight Center. You get a chance to work with moon rocks and meteorites and in the clean rooms, and it really is the lunar lab.
Yes, it's a great place, and it's really fun whenever we have guests that we get to share these, you know, these precious samples with.
So we're tying this
I
all back.
encourage all teachers to go out and try to find where they can get lunar and meteorite certified.
I agree. How can you get lunar meteorite certified? All you have to do is go to nasa.gov. You can actually go to your favorite search engine and type in lunar certification, NASA, or NASA lunar certification, and various websites will come up. And so as we tie this all back into the total lunar eclipse, obviously we're watching a live stream now from the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles, California, on a different time zone than us, but we're able to see what they're experiencing on their end. And so if you're talking about the lunar eclipse, you're talking about lunar samples, what's one of the most exciting or interesting samples you have in your lab?
Oh my goodness. I would say several of the rocks that we have that have a northosite splash on them. Those are the coolest looking lunar rocks. They're rocks that whenever a meteorite impacted on the moon, that heat and that melt splashed out and melted the rock around it, the anorthosite rock around it, that it actually fused to the other rocks. You get a real pretty crystalline structure. It's really just beautiful. Those are my favorite rocks.
That sounds great. And yeah, I'm sure that's all that intense heat, and just the combination of the materials. And so once again, it's wonderful. I really appreciate you joining us. Once again, like Mitzi has all her friends that have called in tonight. I've got some of my friends and colleagues. That's one of the things that's great about working at NASA is everybody likes to help everybody else. And so we appreciate you and everyone from the Johnson Space Center who's joined us tonight. I appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Great. Have a good cast. I'll be watching.
Hey, thanks, Suzanne. We really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Suzanne Foxworth at NASA's Johnson Space Center joining us from Houston, Texas. Once again, a chance to show that these lunar samples and these lunar rocks and meteorite samples are something that teachers and educators can get their hands on free of charge from various NASA education offices. And so, so far our show's really, I think it's picked up a lot. We've had these great live feeds that have been coming in. Our guests have been rolling through left and right. We've got great content, great questions. The photo contest is happening. It's a mouthful for sure. And we've actually got another guest joining us live here in the studio tonight. And I'm going to let Mitzi toss to our next guest.
Dr. Jim Spann, one of my favorite people, grew up in Brazil and speaks Portuguese fluently as well as English. And he's going to answer a few questions for us.
Absolutely. We've got Dr. James Spann, who's right here in front of a monitor. And believe it or not, this monitor is not turned off. It's actually on. And because this is a live feed from the Griffith Observatory, so what must they be experiencing?
They must not be able to see the moon very well. So they may be having some technical difficulties. I doubt they're having clouds.
So Dr. James Spann, can you tell us a little bit, our audience, your title, your role, and responsibilities here at NASA Marshall for our viewing audience?
Yes, my name's Jim Spann, and I am the chief scientist in the Science and Technology office here at Marshall Space Flight Center. And basically in that role, I kind of represent the science of Marshall Space Flight Center to the agency and to the academic community.
And if you would, if you could kind of repeat some of these answers in Portuguese for, as we heard earlier, we've got some people from Lisbon, Portugal, have actually been tweeting and sharing images. And so if you don't mind, that'd be great for our international audience.
Okay.
So, Jim, could you explain in Portuguese the difference between a total and a total solar eclipse and a total lunar eclipse?
O eclipse da Lua ocorre quando a Terra aparece entre a Lua e o Sol. Então, a luz que vem do Sol bate na Terra e faz fica escuro no outro lado da Terra por causa do shadow que existe. Quando tem a eclipse solar, o local da Lua e a Terra é o oposto. Quer dizer que a Lua, nesse caso, a Lua aparece entre o Sol e a Terra. Is that okay?
That's fantastic. Well, I don't know. I heard eclipse in there somewhere.
I heard the Luna.
Yeah.
Did you see any questions fly through the Twitter feed, you know, that kind of sparked your interest?
Yes, there was several questions have been about why the moon turns red, and I could speak to that in Portuguese if you would like for me to.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
Então, tem várias questões sobre por que é que a Lua aparece vermelho quando durante essa eclipse da Lua. E a razão é porque quando a luz que vem do Sol passa na atmosfera da Terra, aí a luz que é composto de todas as cores, do azul, vermelho, verde, amarelo, mas quando a luz passa na atmosfera, aí a luz fica espalhado por causa da atmosfera, as constituição da atmosfera. E essa espalhação da luz é diferente dependendo da cor. E a cor verde e a cor azul são espalhados mais. Então, a cor vermelha é espalhado menos, então passa mais direto. Então, essa cor pode, essa luz que é vermelha, aí bate na Lua e reflete para a gente ver da Terra. Então, por isso que a cor, durante essa eclipse lunar da Lua, é vermelha. É a mesma razão que quando o Sol vai estar pondo durante a tarde, aí tem o Sol fica vermelho, é a mesma razão, porque passa pela atmosfera da Terra. Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Were there any others?
There were several other questions regarding whether there are little green men on Mars, but I didn't think that had anything to do with the lunar eclipse. But
good call.
Yeah.
No, and that's one thing. It's the same when we do Reddit AMAs, anything on social media. We love to engage all our fans, and so Reddit AMAs or Ask Me Anythings, and so we answer with our guests as many as possible. We obviously try to answer as many technical and specific questions, and we kind of skip the alien jokes or things like that. But sometimes they're funny and they're cute and quaint, and we might get involved and just reply to join in the conversation.
There were some questions regarding like how often it occurs and those sorts of things, and so I responded que essas o eclipse da Lua acontece mais ou menos cada 18 meses, mas não pode ser visto do mesmo lugar, porque dependendo do local na Terra onde a eclipse vai aparecer. Então, de vez em quando pode aparecer no mesmo local, mas geralmente não é.
Jim, when you lived in Brazil, did you ever see an eclipse?
I actually never saw an eclipse while I was in Brazil. However, growing up down there as a young kid, one of my very best friends, Bob Berry, who was actually communicating with me earlier, got me very interested in science. And he had a telescope, and we went out into the interior of the state of Rio de Janeiro, and I got to look at some stars and some galaxies for the very first time as a young person, and that really sparked my interest in science.
You also, I know, made a trip to Peru when you were younger, and just out of high school. What were the skies like around Lake Titicaca?
Lake Titicaca, which is on the border of Bolivia and Peru, the skies were fabulous. We had a previous guest on who talked about looking for dark skies, or the importance of having dark skies, and what that means is basically getting away from the light pollution or the artificial light from our cities or civilization. And when you're out in the interior, very remote areas like Lake Titicaca, particularly in the southern hemisphere, the Milky Way is just absolutely fabulous. More recently, I spent a night on a boat in the Amazon River, going from one small town to the other. And at that time, we were also able to look up at the sky. We asked the captain of the boat to turn off all the lights, and really just got a majestic view of the heavens, and it was just absolutely undescribable. It was just really quite phenomenal.
That sounds like my first view of the southern sky from the Amazon. We were actually going to do a nighttime viewing of critters, and I got in the boat and just happened to look up, and I spent the rest of the trip in the bottom of the boat looking up at the sky. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, when your eyes get dark adapted like that, it is really absolutely fantastic what it is that you can see.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate your. It's wonderful to have you join us tonight. I know you've been helping us out with all those Twitter feeds, especially once again we're getting content that's coming all around the world. I'm scrolling through, reading our Twitter feeds. More content. Caracas, Baghdad. We just talked about Portugal. A lot of people who've seen the images or have seen great total lunar eclipse viewings, and they're sending those images in to our photo contest or putting them on Twitter. And so here in just a second, I'm going to go through and bring up a couple photos. As we see the Lafayette Science Museum in Lafayette, Louisiana, and they're showing a live feed from here. However, it looks like it's probably a little cloudy, maybe experiencing some clouds once again and losing that image. We've been fortunate to see just a little bit. I can see the moon kind of shining through at the top center. At least that's what it looks like. Right in the top center of the image from the Lafayette Science Museum. We're having, as always, there's always some kind of technical issue that creeps and crops up, especially when we're dealing with science centers and museums from all around the country. And so the Griffith Observatory had provided a feed earlier, and so we were fortunate to have that feed. Adler had given us a feed earlier, and so we were using that feed. And so I'm going to scroll through real quick and look for some images that we've seen of the eclipse as it's happening tonight, the total lunar eclipse, and remind everybody that you can send your questions in to us on NASA, at NASA_Marshall. At NASA_Marshall is our Twitter account, and you can send in your questions, tweet to us. We've got experts, including Dr. James Spann, who we just heard, who's working behind the scenes and is answering, along with our staff of social media experts who are working in our social media room, answering as many questions as we can. And trust me, we are getting lots of questions. We're answering as many as we were able to, and we'll go through the rest of the night and answer more tonight and all through tomorrow. It's one of my projects and one of my job responsibilities are social media for NASA Marshall. And so highly likely to be myself or Shannon Ridinger, who you met earlier today, as well as Will Bryan, who's manning our social media for Twitter, and Jennifer Harbaugh, who's managing the photo contest tonight. As you submit photos, just like the photos that we're seeing right here, right now is another one of the images that we've gotten from some of our viewers from all across the country. Let's see if we can get the name here. This one is from Husan_Saad_, and I believe he might be in Canada, and so he's sending in some of these images. We're getting them from all around the world, at least the parts of the world that are able to see the eclipse. I shouldn't say all around the world, but the Americas, West Africa, Europe, and a lot of South America countries.
Mm-hmm. All of South America.
All of South America. And so I encourage you to continue to send in your images, to continue to tweet questions. We've got another guest expert that Mitzi, actually another one of your friends. This is a very exciting interview for us. We wish he was joining us live here in the studio. It would be even better. But if you want to give us a quick synopsis of who we're going to speak before we toss to him, this will be a recorded interview. And so while we go through the recorded interview, we'll actually take a quick break. We're going to step off the broadcast desk and want to continue to read your questions. And once the interview ends, we might go back to our live feed and throw out some great Third Rock radio for your listening pleasure. So as we toss to the next recorded interview, who is this that we're going to hear from?
Well, Fred Espenak couldn't be with us live this evening because he is in Arizona, and he is viewing the eclipse, I hope, in clear skies. But he's an astrophysicist, recently retired from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. He he worked on flare stars, not the sun, but flare stars. But he was fascinated with eclipses, and he got his name for, or he made a name for himself, creating eclipse pages and doing calculations that has predicted past eclipses, or gone back in time and gone into the future, predicting eclipses that will happen in the future. And he's the author of many books on eclipses that are now considered to be standard references. So this individual is a very interesting man, and I hope that you'll all enjoy the interview.
Absolutely. I believe we recorded this Friday, and he actually worked at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center for quite a while, and so this is another person, once again, who's retired from NASA, but takes the time to give back to what we're doing as an agency, sees the importance in all that, and so it's wonderful that he took the time. And so once again, we'll toss to Dr. Fred Espenak as he gives a recorded interview with our own Mitzi Adams earlier on Friday afternoon.
Fred, please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and I'll say a few words about you myself, and then I'll ask you some questions.
Okay. I'm Fred Espenak. I'm a scientist emeritus with NASA Goddard Space Flight Center.
Fred Espenak is an astrophysicist, recently retired from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Mr. Espenak's graduate work involved my favorite topic, flares. But he looked at flaring activity from stars other than our sun. He looked specifically at red dwarfs. Since 1978, Fred provided NASA's eclipse bulletins along with detailed calculations for prediction of future solar and lunar eclipses. And Mr. Espenak is the author of many books on eclipses that are considered to be standard references. Fred, you are known as Mr. Eclipse.
Yes,
Why do eclipses fascinate you personally?
Well, it all goes back to a total eclipse of the sun that I saw back in 1970. I was still a high school student at the time, and I was an amateur astronomer. And I thought that this would be my one chance in a lifetime to see a total eclipse of the sun. And I managed to get down to the path of the eclipse. It was quite a long car drive for me, and I had just gotten my driver's license. But I managed to get into the eclipse path, had good weather, and the eclipse just bowled me over. It was the most spectacular thing I had ever seen. And that was really the start of my interest in solar eclipses and lunar eclipses as well.
I believe you and I saw that same eclipse, except I was under clouds.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I was close to Savannah, Georgia, and unfortunately I didn't see it, but I experienced it. It was very strange to have total darkness in the middle of the day.
That's right, and it comes upon you so quickly during a solar eclipse, and Americans are going to get that chance to do it just a little under 2 years from now in 2017.
I'm very excited about that. Now, in the last eclipse that we tried to observe here in Huntsville, so far we've not had real good luck. It was a very short eclipse, and there was a little bit of discussion about whether it was actually even a total eclipse. What kind of difficulties are there when you're trying to predict when an eclipse is going to happen, how long it's going to be, whether it's really total or whether it's partial? What kinds of things do you run into when you try to do that?
Well, with a lunar eclipse, like we had 6 months ago in April, that was an eclipse where the moon just barely skirted the inside of the Earth's shadow, and it came very close. The edge of the moon was very close to the edge of the Earth's shadow. The reason why there was some discussion about whether that eclipse was really total or not is because the edge of the moon's shadow isn't sharp. It's fuzzy. And it depends on a number of factors. It depends on the mathematical model that you use for modeling the Earth's shadow. It depends on the Earth's atmosphere and what the transparency of it happens to be on eclipse day. If you've got a lot of cloud cover, if you've got some forest fires that are throwing a lot of smoke into the air, that can affect the shape and size of the Earth's shadow. And none of this stuff can be predicted in advance, plus the fact that the Earth's shadow isn't perfectly circular. The Earth isn't completely round. It's an oblate spheroid. And if you really want to do the calculation very accurately, you have to take that into effect, too, the fact that the Earth's shadow is actually a little bit egg-shaped. So all these things complicate the actual calculation of whether, when you've got a test case like this where the moon is very close to the edge of the shadow, whether it's a total eclipse or not.
So I guess having a computer really helps with the accuracy of your predictions.
No, all of this stuff, it would be very difficult to do without computers, because they're doing, we still have to program the computers and give it all the right equations, but it can do, so many millions of calculations so quickly that it's easy to do the calculations using a computer, where it would be a real chore to try to do this stuff by hand.
So what kind of conditions determine the color of the eclipse? You mentioned, that it's important to know certain things for modeling the atmosphere and determining whether it's total and when it's going to happen. Are those kinds of things important for the color of a lunar eclipse as well?
Yeah, the color of a lunar eclipse very much depends on conditions, again, in the Earth's atmosphere. During a lunar eclipse, during the partial phases, the moon is still illuminated by sunlight shining around the edge of the Earth. The Earth hasn't blocked the entire sun. If you were standing on the moon, you would see a partial eclipse of the sun during the partial phases of the lunar eclipse from Earth. But once the eclipse becomes total, the moon is completely immersed in Earth's shadow, and the only sunlight that reaches the moon then is sunlight that's been refracted through Earth's atmosphere and heavily filtered through Earth's atmosphere. So any kind of conditions that are taking place in Earth's atmosphere, again, how much cloud cover there is, how much smoke happens to be up in the atmosphere from forest fires or from volcanic eruptions, all play into how much light actually reaches the moon during the eclipse.
Now, I know that there were volcanic eruptions earlier in the year in Chile, and it seemed to me, I read somewhere, that the height of the particulates from those eruptions might be enough to keep the particulates in the atmosphere long enough to affect this eclipse. Do you have any predictions about that?
The particulates themselves don't really stay in the atmosphere very long. We're talking about weeks at the most before most of that stuff settles out. It's really some of the volcanic gases that play a bigger role. Sulfur dioxide, for instance, and that can be more long-lived in the atmosphere. But those eruptions down in Chile were not very big in terms of affecting the lunar eclipse. So I don't think we're going to see an effect from that.
What about the fires in California?
Again, they could have a small role, but you really need some much larger, over much more of a geographic area than California. California is a big state, but it's small compared to the size of the Earth. You really need to have a much more geographic area impacted by fires in order for that to play an important role. We did have a very, very dark lunar eclipse back in the very early 90s. I think it was 92, which was not long after a very powerful volcano exploded in the Philippines, Mount Pinatubo. And that did have a significant effect on the eclipse. In fact, the moon, if you were in a city with bright lights around, the moon actually vanished. You couldn't even see it during the total eclipse. If you were in an area where it was very dark, you could still make the moon out, but it was very, very dark. It was a dark gray, very dark brown.
Now,
I don't expect that.
Okay, sorry, you don't expect that for this eclipse, but if a student wanted to do some kind of scientific sort of experiment about the color or the darkness of this eclipse, Could they do that?
Yeah, they can try to make an estimate of the brightness of the eclipse. There's a scale that a French astronomer devised in the 1950s. His name was Anton Dejean, and he produced a scale called the Dejean scale, and it just rates very crudely the brightness of the moon during the eclipse. And it describes the color of the moon and how bright it is compared to any nearby stars. And it's a very simple 1 to 5 scale. Students can look this up online for the Dejean scale, D-A-J-O-N, and lunar eclipses, and they can look up about this and try to make an estimate about how bright the moon is and what color it is during totality.
Okay, now, if you happen to have been an astronomer accompanying Columbus on one of his expeditions to the New World, and you wanted to predict an eclipse, what would you need? And when I say predict an eclipse, I mean lunar or solar. What kinds of things would you need around, the last part of the 1400s? What would you need to predict eclipses?
Boy, well, prediction back in those days was a very different kind of an animal because we didn't have a detailed understanding of the moon's orbit around the Earth or the Earth's orbit around the sun. Of course, they didn't even believe that some people didn't even believe that the Earth orbited around the sun back in the 14th, 15th century. But the eclipses that were known or predicted back in those days were based primarily on records of previous eclipses, because eclipses tend to repeat themselves every 18 years, 11 days. It's a period called the Saros cycle. It doesn't last indefinitely. These Saros cycles develop and become strong, and then they peter out. But over several dozen eclipses, it's a good tool for predicting an eclipse. So Columbus, some of the books, he relied on a nautical almanac that had some predictions of eclipses that year, and they had used predictions from the previous 18 years when a similar eclipse took place.
What do you plan to do on August 21st, 2017?
Well, hopefully I will be in a location someplace in the central U.S. where the sky is nice and clear, because that's the date of the total solar eclipse passing through the United States.
Now, this has been referred to as the Great American Eclipse. Why is that?
Well, it's the first of all, we haven't had a total eclipse of the sun visible from the lower 48 states since 1979. So it's been a gap of 38 years. Plus, this eclipse in 2017 does not touch any other nation. The path of the eclipse runs exclusively through the United States. So for those two reasons, since it's been a long time since we've had a total eclipse, and the fact that it only touches the United States makes it America's eclipse.
So if you are going to observe this upcoming 2017 solar eclipse, what kind of equipment should a beginner look for?
I think probably there are really two things that a beginner needs to have, and that's the will to go see the eclipse. And you've got to. The problem with a total solar eclipse is, in order to see the total phase of the eclipse, you have to be in something called the path of totality, and that is actually the path that the moon's shadow takes as it crosses the United States. That path is only about 69 or 70 miles wide, and it crosses the country diagonally from Oregon into Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska, Illinois, into Kentucky and Tennessee, and then into North and South Carolina. And you've got to travel up into that narrow 65 to 70 mile wide path in order to see the total eclipse. So that's number one. You've got to be in the right place, and hopefully with good weather. The other thing that the beginner needs to have is something called a pair of eclipse glasses. These are very simple cardboard frames that have special glasses, special plastic material in there that filters the sun's sunlight. You need these glasses to watch the partial phases. In fact, anybody who wants to Anybody who wants to watch the partial phases of the eclipse needs a pair of these eclipse glasses. And you can Google and find them online. There are a number of companies that manufacture these things. Rainbow Symphony, Thousand Oaks Optical, American Paper Optics are three major companies that produce these eclipse glasses. You can find them online. You can Google them. Magazines will probably have them inserted into them so you can get them there. But you need those glasses to protect your eyes during the partial phases. And all of the United States will see the partial phases. It's only that narrow path of totality where you see the total eclipse. And from that area, when the eclipse goes total and the moon completely covers the sun, then you take the eclipse glasses off and you look at it directly with the naked eye. And it's a spectacular thing. It's the most remarkable natural phenomenon I have ever seen. And it's produced my life's work because I've chased eclipses all over the world now. This will be my 28th eclipse in 2017.
28th eclipse, that's 28th solar eclipse, is that right?
28 total solar eclipses.
Oh, that's very special.
Yeah, I've seen other types of solar eclipses, partial eclipses and annular eclipses, and I've seen many lunar eclipses, but this will be 28 total solar eclipses.
But for this lunar eclipse, that's you don't really need any kind of special protection for your eyes.
No, the lunar eclipse is totally safe. You don't need any kind of filters. The best use of the lunar eclipse on Sunday is with the naked eye or a pair of binoculars. If you have access to a telescope, that's fine, and you can get some nice views through a telescope, but it's certainly not necessary. You can really get a great view just with the naked eye and with a pair of binoculars.
Well, that's great, Fred. Thank you for answering my questions. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I hope everybody will go out and give a try to look at the eclipse if you have good weather, because a lunar eclipse is something that you can see from even from the brightest cities where normally you wouldn't be able to see things like the Milky Way. You can still go out and see the lunar eclipse, and it's a great educational opportunity for kids to get out and see something, learn something about science, and learn something about our world.
Well, thanks again, Fred.
Thank you.
Sarah would have spells where she lost time. She saw the future, she heard voices from inside. The kind of voices she would soon learn to deny. Because at home they got her smacked. Zach and Sarah. Zach and Sarah. Zach called his dad about layaway plans. And Sarah told the friendly salesman that you'll all die in your cars. And why's it gotta be dark? And you're all working in a submarine. She saw the lights, she saw a pale English face. Some strange machines repeating beats and thumping bass. Visions of pills that put you in a loving trance, that make it possible for all white boys to dance. And when Zach finished Sarah's song, Sarah clapped. Zach and Sarah. Zach and Sarah.
choose love, we choose light, and we try. It's too easy just to fall apart. Plastic bottles and imported water, cars we drive wherever we want to, clothes we buy and sweatshop labor, drugs from corporate enablers. We're not living a good life, we're fighting a good fight. You and me just trying to get it right. In the center of the first world laid out for us, who are we to break down? Every day we wake up, we choose love, we choose light, and we try. It's too easy just to fall apart. Love can free us from all excess.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to NASA Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, as we've been bringing and streaming live video all night tonight of the 2015 total lunar eclipse.
As best we can.
As best we can, stated by our resident astronomer and solar physicist Mitzi Adams. Mitzi, real quick, if you would mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself, your title, and your role here at NASA Marshall.
Me? Let's see. My official title is astrophysicist. I'm a solar physicist. I study the sun. I'm currently interested in jets that we see in the chromosphere and corona of the sun. And I guess I had my, basic research. I cut my basic research teeth on sunspots and sunspot magnetic fields.
You're a stalwart for our Ustream events, if you will. It's great to have you along. You've got great connections. You've got all this great insight that you provide. And so it's been a pleasure having you with us. And it's also going to be a pleasure to have our next guest joining us, who, once again, is someone that you and I talked about in the last week or so. Very important in the astronomy-based world. And so, hello, sir. Are you online? Can you hear us?
Jay, Dr. Pasikoff? Hello?
Oh, this is Maria Chambers.
Oh, we're getting close. Well, I'll tell you what we can do. While we have Maria on, we'll go through Maria's interview, and then we'll wait for Jay to come back on. I did talk to him earlier, and he said hopefully he'd get a chance to log in and dial in. He was a little busy. And so we'll move on to our next guest. So that's great, Maria. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. If you would, please, could you tell our audience watching all around the world tonight, as we've gotten viewer responses from basically Africa to all of South America, all through Europe and the Americas and Canada. Will you please tell everybody viewing your name, your title, and your role played with NASA?
Yes, my name is Maria Chambers, and I work at NASA Ames Research Center. It's located in Moffattville, California. I'm an educator professional development specialist, so I primarily work with educators from all over the United States, but specifically in the 9.5 state region that Ames has.
Yeah, and so the 9.5 state, you're talking about Hawaii, all up the western seaboard, all the way to Alaska.
Yes, that is correct.
And so you travel to these various states. Must be a tough gig to have to travel to Hawaii and Alaska to talk NASA.
Yeah, I did. I've gone to Hawaii this year, and I will be traveling to Alaska and Oregon next month to do lunar and meteorite certifications.
That's and two things about that. One reason is all the NASA centers all around the country have certain states that they're responsible for. Whether it's East Coast or West Coast, the various NASA centers are responsible for multiple state regions because taxpayers in each state pay their taxes, and we're funded by taxpayer dollars. So we've got basically it's taxation with representation by making sure that Maria and other center education specialists and scientists travel to all the states in their region and provide the same kind of content from one state to the other. So it works out great for you, but it works out great for us because we get to share all this NASA content, especially lunar content, with students and educators and general public all across the United States.
Yes, that's correct. And one thing I wanted to get across is one thing that we do in all of our workshops are online. We give free professional development webinars. We do 4-week monthly, and they're all aligned to the next generation science standards. And that's a big push in a lot of states is integrating those. And so we really try to stay up to date with the newest standards. We also, with our free online webinars, we also have a website where teachers can go and sign up for these. It's free. And so I was going to go ahead and give you the website. It's www.txstate-epdc.net. So that's where you can go, and if you click on events at the top, you can see the list of all the webinars for the month of upcoming October.
And these are various webinars, all free, all online. Anybody can register. And it's not just you that are doing these webinars, correct?
No, so there's 10 of us, educator professional development specialists, and we're located at each of the 10 NASA centers all across the United States. So whether you're in the Ames region or you're in Texas or Huntsville, there's a specialist there to help you out. And you can go to the website, you can find our information, and you can sign up for face-to-face workshops. You can request those, and you can also sign up for our free online webinars.
Free online webinars. Excellent for educators and students, especially people who are in various STEM degrees and STEM fields. And so you just mentioned going and doing some lunar certification workshops, and so you'll be traveling to do that. Tell us a little bit about how these workshops go. We're talking all sorts of lunar content tonight. What's some of the coolest things that you are teaching people about the moon?
So one of the coolest things that I enjoy teaching when I'm teaching about the moon is talking about the different types of rocks that we find on the moon. And so we do this one activity, and it's called rock card sorting. And so I talk about the northosite rocks, the impact breccia, and the I'm drawing a blank. There's 3 different kinds that we talk about, and I talk about which part of the moon that they're located on, and then the teachers actually get rock cards, just like the planetary geologists get, and they actually have to look at the rock and identify which kind it is, just like they would in the lunar lab. And it just really relates to what scientists do, and that gives the teacher an idea of how they can integrate it into their classroom with their students.
That sounds like a lot of fun. It's a very interesting activity, and something that you can not only enjoy, but also can kind of share that with other people. And so I know that's one thing, is that if you get a chance to reach out and teach 20 educators, then those 20 educators in turn reach out and teach 200-300 students, and then the cycle of life continues.
That is the goal, is we want to reach not only teachers but students as well.
And so while we have you online here, we're showing live feed. We've been showing live feeds all night tonight. Some have been crisp and clear, and others have been very cloudy. And we're seeing a feed right now from the Lafayette Science Museum in Lafayette, Louisiana, and who through all night was experiencing heavy clouds. And fortunately, we were able to actually get some clear view skies of what's going on here. So real quick, Mitzi, while we got Maria Chambers on hold, can you give our viewers a description of what people in Lafayette are experiencing and what our viewers across the globe are able to see with tonight's total lunar eclipse?
According to my table, the total eclipse ends, or ended, at 10:23 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And if you see just on the left side of the moon, in this image that we're receiving from Lafayette Science Museum, it's getting brighter and brighter. So the moon is moving out of the umbral, the darkest part of the shadow that the Earth is casting on the moon, and the total eclipse phase is ending.
This is a great feed. And so Maria, you're out on the West Coast. You're getting a chance to see the feed when it see the total lunar eclipse when it happens on the West Coast. And so what are some activities that you use to teach people about solar eclipses and about lunar eclipses?
So, with the lunar certifications, we don't actually focus specifically on the lunar and solar eclipse. We talk more about the impact craters and how the moon was formed, those aspects.
Okay, and on our live feed, we can see as the moon is being revealed, as it ends and it's going out of phase, we can see some of these craters on the moon, large craters, basalt-filled Maria. And so can you give us a little description of what are some of the geological features that we find on the moon?
Some of the geological features?
Yes.
So, well, we have various sizes of craters, and like I spoke of earlier, we do have different rock samples that we have found. Specifically, we have the volcanism where the volcanoes erupted, and so that left different rock samples also. And that's one thing that we share in our workshops, is we have samples of those rocks, and the teachers get to see those and look at them under a microscope up close. And it really brings it to life for them, and brings it to life for their students, and they're able to bring it into the classroom for those 2 weeks.
That's a great way to put it. It brings it to life. Everybody gets to see up close and personal, literally through telescopes. And so real quickly, before I let you go, can you give us the Twitter account that people can follow to learn more about your educational webinars?
Yes, so our Twitter account is at NASA EPDC, and we have a Facebook and Twitter account, and so you can follow us there and get up-to-date information on all our webinars and then upcoming face-to-face workshops as well.
EPDC, so it's at NASA EPDC, and that stands for Educator
Professional Development Collaborative.
Collaborative, okay. I wasn't sure what the last letter was. So at NASA EPDC is the Twitter handle that all our viewers across the world can follow. to learn a little more about the work that you do as well as all your colleagues. Maria, once again, a good friend of mine I've known for several years, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk lunar education with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maria. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Maria Chambers works at NASA Ames Research Center in just south of San Francisco, California. And so they're getting a chance to experience the eclipse, whereas here on sort of the East Coast, we're in Central Time, but we're close to the East Coast, kind of mid-America. We're seeing a feed from the Lafayette Science Museum as the eclipse is ending. And Mitzi, is there a term, if we're talking about the phases of the moon, waxing and waning, and we're talking about the eclipse entering the penumbra and umbra, is there a term that we use for that would be similar to waxing and waning for solar eclipses? Or lunar eclipses?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. I've never heard one.
Basically, the shadow is more or less symmetric. So the phases that we go through at the beginning of the eclipse are just repeated at the end of the eclipse.
Right. Yeah. The mostly I see it referred to as entering the penumbra or umbra. Entering or exiting seems to be the main description. But you never know. It could have been a key term that you scientists know. So I really appreciate that. And appreciate everyone who's joined us all night tonight. Excuse me, as we have had a great audience. Great is an underestimate. It's been overwhelming. In fact, as we've showed our feeds tonight, all night tonight, we had over 200,000 people tried to log on to nasa.gov all at the same time. This caused a little bit of a network issue. That wasn't quite on our end. It was on the providers' end, ISP providers and all that. And so there were already, a countless number of people who were on nasa.gov, and then over 200,000 people tried to log on following that, and just floods the network. In fact, it was told it was one of the largest spike that they've had since space shuttle days. And so well over 1 million people, I've heard, have been logged on throughout the night, both on NASA Marshall Ustream as well as NASA Marshall Ustream account. And so that is a true testament to just how interesting people how interested people are into these kind of lunar eclipses.
I just thank everyone for their interest in science, and keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. All around the world, a long list of countries. I've been rattling the names off as we scroll through our Twitter feed. And so if you've got questions, you can continue to ask your questions to at NASA_Marshall. That's our Twitter account, at NASA_Marshall. You can use the hashtag AskNASA. We've got a staff that's here in the studio, and we're answering questions and liking and faving and sharing as many as possible. You can also get involved in our photo contest tonight. You can take a picture of the eclipse and you can submit it if you go to our NASA Marshall Facebook page. Go to NASA Marshall Facebook page, as well as a couple other pages. You can go to NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. You can go to their Facebook page. You can go to the main agency NASA Facebook page, and you'll find a tab across the top of the screen that will say hashtag SuperBloodMoon. That's the hashtag for you to tag your lunar eclipse photo, and we're going to go through. We got a staff in there right now. I've been going through and scrolling, seeing the photos of that our staff is going through and selecting. Literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos. So we're going to pick the best ones, put them on a gallery, and let you, the viewer at home, take a chance to vote on your favorite ones, and then we'll take the best image or the best top 5 or top 6, and we're going to put those on NASA social media accounts for the world to see. So very excited to have that social media engagement and to see all the people around the world that are talking and just asking questions. Mitzi, it's such a great age we live in where we can bring people from all around the world together.
I think so, and this eclipse is really special because Canada and the United States and Mexico and all the countries in Central America and South America, we're all getting an opportunity to see this eclipse at the same time, assuming we have clear skies. But even if we have cloudy skies, everybody is focused, or a lot of people are focused on looking at the sky and learning more about our closest neighbor in space, and I think that's a great thing. I'd really like to thank all of our participants here, Austin Peay University in Clarksville, Tennessee, Fernbank Science Center in Atlanta, Lafayette Science Museum in Lafayette, Louisiana, are currently providing us this live feed. We have been getting some images from the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, and I'd really like to thank the folks out there for trying to put this together. At the moment, we don't have those up, but we're trying to get them up. John McGraw and Don Zierzow and Pete Zimmer and some students out there have been really, really helpful in putting that together. And if we don't get it together before our show is over tonight, we will have those up later, and especially after we edit the movies.
Absolutely.
But we have so many people participating in this event and asking questions, and I'm really, really happy that we're able to answer as many as we have. And again, please do submit those questions if you have them, and keep looking up.
Absolutely. We've got great questions coming in. While we wait for our next guest to join us on the line, I'll go through and pull a couple questions right here. This one, I like this one. And this ties into a fun fact I came across a few weeks ago. So this one is from _Letitia Rose. Mitzi, this one's an easy one. I think a lot of people are seeing, this is a great educational opportunity because they're seeing these words. And so why do we call this a supermoon?
Okay. The term supermoon simply refers to the fact that the moon is at its closest point in its orbit around Earth. And we call that perigee. And the point in its orbit where it's farthest from Earth is called apogee. And similarly, we have a similar term for when Earth is closest to the Sun, and that would be called perihelion, and farthest would be aphelion. And there's not a whole lot of difference because the orbits of Earth around the Sun and the Moon around Earth, they are in fact elliptical, but the ellipses are very, very close to circular. So the difference is not that great, but we do call this a supermoon because it is its closest approach to Earth in its orbit. And it also happens to be a harvest moon, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, very rare.
I wouldn't say it's rare per se, but it's kind of interesting because the moons, each moon, every month, there's a name for the moon. We're most familiar with the term harvest moon, but there are other names that have been coined throughout time.
Absolutely, and it changes whether it's blood moon or supermoon, and it's all based on just kind of the society and culture. We talked a lot with one of the earlier experts about archaeoastronomy, and the way the Mayans and the Incans would have viewed it, and the way they would have phrased it and thought about it is obviously a little different than today. And so human history definitely changes some aspects. And so the supermoon is cool. So would it be true that when the moon is at apogee, when it's further away, we would call that a mini moon? Could we go for that?
We could go for that, yeah.
Supermoon and mini moon. It's just if it's closer or farther away. And so we are joined by one of our guests, a very special guest joining us. I believe we have him on the phone right now. Mitzi, I'll let you toss and see if you can get our special guest on the phone.
Yeah, hi, Mitzi.
Hi, Jay. Great to hear from you. This is Dr. Jay Pasikoff. He is extremely well known for solar eclipse observations. He's a professor at Williams College, and we have a couple of questions for you.
Sure. We've been having a lot of fun here in Williamstown, Massachusetts, watching the eclipse for the last couple of hours.
Well, I understand Boston is clear, and you're clear as well.
Yes, there have been a few clouds drifting over, but we're about 135 miles west of Boston, near the New York state line, and it's been almost entirely clear. And then it got nice and dark when the moon went away, and we could see the Milky Way, and we see the Pleiades rising. It's been fun. We had about 100 people. Some of my students from freshman courses and other students have been up.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you had a good experience. I haven't, but I have been enjoying the feed from Lafayette.
Was it cloudy down with you?
It's very cloudy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not even a glimmer. I should have flown out to New Mexico, where John McGraw is. Why do eclipses, both lunar and solar, fascinate you personally?
Well, I started off with a solar eclipse my freshman year in college. when my professor flew his freshman seminar up in a plane to see the eclipse, and just the idea that it can be predicted and the dazzling darkness just really enthralled me. And I've now seen 62 solar eclipses. The lunar eclipses are just kind of fun. They're you can practice some photography. You can look up, see the moon turn red, know that things are being predicted right, and it's kind of a holiday thing for me, because the tension of a minute or two or three from a solar eclipse is absent when you get this hour-long totality.
Yeah, it's quite a treat to have so much time to set up your camera and take photographs, whereas in a solar eclipse, by that time it's all over.
Yes, but we do try to get things very accurate. I know you and I have discussed, Mitzi, getting accurate information out to the people for the 2017 August 21st solar eclipse, which will be great with a path of totality crossing the country from Oregon to South Carolina. So we want people to know how to observe it and why it's fun to observe, and that you can see the total part without any filters, but that you need filters for the partial phases if you're off to the side or before and after. But for this lunar eclipse, it's just been very annoying that there's been this so-called blood moon, which of course is really a silly name. I'd like to call it a raspberry sherbet moon. It's just a little faint reddish that's there in the sun all the time, but usually hidden behind the bright white, I'd say French vanilla sunlight hitting the moon. So as soon as about a third or half the dark part of the moon became visible, you could see a little reddish raspberry sherbet there. So we've had fun looking at that.
I'm fine with that.
Raspberry sherbet. I'm a runner, Jay. So yesterday I ran 14 miles and I'm still hungry. So you're making me hungry again.
Okay.
So, how are you seeing the eclipse? You describe it as raspberry sherbet. Does it appear any darker, or is it any more red than perhaps the last one that you saw?
Well, it's hard to know. I saw the eclipse in April, the lunar eclipse in April, and it's hard for me to really compare without seeing side-by-side photographs. This might be a little less red. Maybe the volcano in Sumatra a couple of weeks ago did something to particles in the air, but it's hard to say. You really see the red better with a long exposure on my Nikon, and it's just fun to think that that's the light from sunrises and sunsets all around the world leaking through and hitting the moon.
So where do you plan to be on August 21st, 2017, which is the date of the total solar eclipse that will go all the way across the United States?
Well, I've looked at the weather statistics, the cloudiness statistics that the meteorologist Jay Anderson compiles from satellite photographs over about 20 years. And it looks to me that Oregon has the best chance of clear weather. My wife and I did go out there a year ago, and sometimes it was clear, and sometimes it was cloudy, and sometimes it was partly clear and partly cloudy. But going by the statistics, I like to go by the statistics, and that's where we're going to go. I have a group of tourists who will accompany my professional group of researchers, and we're looking forward to that.
Well, I know that you have had students go with you in the past.
Yeah, we always take our Williams College students.
And about how many do you suspect you'll have in 2017? Is it kind of a standard number, or?
Well, these are undergraduates, so we don't really know in advance. I'll give my seminar for juniors and seniors on solar physics that semester. And so maybe we'll be able to take all the students in the seminar, but I don't know how many that'll be.
We are observing a lunar eclipse here, but I'm going to ask you a question about solar eclipses. You are well known for doing scientific observations of solar eclipses, and I've heard it said that with all of our observatories in space, using the solar eclipse to do science is not as important as it used to be. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's not the only thing for studying the corona now, but there still are large gaps in the coverage of the sun from space that we can still do best from solar eclipses. So there still is at least a decade or two of important research that you can do with a solar eclipse. For one thing, the European Space Agency spacecraft that makes a coronagraph in space, that makes an artificial eclipse, starts a whole solar radius out above the edge of the sun, the limb of the sun. So there's a whole donut of region around the sun that they can't observe from space. There are some other spacecraft, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory, for example, that uses ultraviolet filters, as you well know, to look right at the middle of the sun, the standard disk of the sun. But between those boundaries, there's a whole region where the solar wind is formed and important things happen that we can see best from space. Also, our resolution in the middle and outer corona is better than those from the spacecraft. That's just the way the spacecraft was designed. In fact, the designer of the instrument, the coronagraph, was with me at an eclipse in Bolivia 20 years ago, and he said he would have designed his instrument with higher resolution if he'd ever seen an eclipse before. He didn't realize there was so much important detail to see. So there's still a lot that we can do from an eclipse that you just can't do from space, and we can complete the picture of the sun on the days of eclipses only by doing both the eclipse observations and the space observations.
And you do try to combine the observations that you make during the eclipse with those from space at that particular time, is that right?
Yes. So, for example, a few days after the eclipse in 2013, a combination of my eclipse view with some space views outside and inside the eclipse view was an astronomy picture of the day. You can look that up for November 11th, 2013, for example.
I kind of asked you this in passing when we were discussing eclipses, and I asked you which one was your favorite.
I didn't give you an answer, did I? I like them all. Each one is good. I've got good memories of each one, and each is different, and different circumstances, different last-minute problems, different excitements, and of course, scientifically, the corona looks different each time. I've seen 31 total eclipses out of the 62 solar eclipses of all kinds, and some are with solar maximum, and some with solar minimum, with different shapes of the corona, and sometimes there are coronal eruptions that go out. Each one is different, and they're all good.
The thing that amazed me, the first solar eclipse, total solar eclipse that I saw, was the color of the chromosphere, the reddish color. It's not a color that I typically see on Earth. And of course everyone experiences color differently, so it's kind of hard to quantify. But
well, they are really nice. We try to duplicate some of that in the lab, and I talk a lot about my students about the hydrogen spectrum, where there's this very bright red line, and then there's a less bright blue line that gets mixed in a little bit, so it's not quite pure red, but it certainly is dazzling to the eye for a few seconds at the beginning and the end of totality at an eclipse. And when you came with us to Zambia in 2001, we were together there for the eclipse. It really was great.
yes, it was. It was absolutely fantastic. And thank you for that opportunity. So you have been observing eclipses for quite a long time, and I hope you continue to do so. What advice would you have for a high school student who is interested in astronomy?
Well, certainly read about it. I run a website for the International Astronomical Union at eclipses.info that has a lot of links to other websites and other information about observing eclipses and the importance of eclipses, and the links to sites from some of the other people who've been working on these things. But certainly the high school students on August 21st, 2017 should find a way to travel into the zone of totality and understand that the total eclipse is about 1 million times darker than the everyday sun. So if you have a 99% eclipse, that's only a factor of 100. There's still another factor of 10,000 to go. So a 99% eclipse that somebody who doesn't really know might think is 99% is really quite different from a total eclipse. You actually have to be in that band of totality that stretches from Oregon to Wyoming to Missouri over through South Carolina, and you can get a copy of that map very easily. Michael Zeiler makes a great one at greatamericaneclipse.com, and make sure you find a way to, if you're in high school, convince your parents to take you to the zone of totality for August 21st, 2017.
Well, Jay, I really appreciate you spending the time with us to answer these questions, and I'm glad that you had an opportunity to see the lunar eclipse live there at Williams College, and clear skies continue.
Thank you. I'm sorry that it was cloudy for you in Huntsville, but hope we get to see some clear eclipses together again, Mitzi.
Thank you, Jay.
So long. Good night.
Good night.
Great interview. Save the best for last, I believe. And can you say his last name for me so I know exactly?
Dr. Jay Pasakoff, Professor Jay Pasakoff.
And joining us from Williams College in Massachusetts. Save the best for last. Once again, very renowned educator, professor, and astronomer, and many hats that he wears on his one head. And so I want to thank him for joining us tonight and sharing some of his knowledge and excitement. Glad that they got a chance to see, as well as all our viewers at home right now joining as we broadcast live on NASA television, on NASA Ustream, and our NASA Marshall Ustream account, as we're seeing a live feed from the Lafayette Science Museum. One of the many feeds we had tonight, all night long. We had viewers, we had different science centers, universities that were providing feeds. Unfortunately, and I'm very pleased to say that Lafayette finally got some clear skies tonight.
Mm-hmm.
They earlier in the broadcast they had all clouds. It was very difficult, but I'm sure that they hung it out and stayed there. So now they're getting to see what would be the end of the total lunar eclipse.
So we actually talked about this earlier, that the eclipse is symmetric. So the phases that it's going through now would be the reverse of what happened in the earlier part of the evening. And so the moon is just slowly being uncovered as the moon moves in its orbit around Earth and continues to move out of the shadow of Earth. It's moving out of the umbral shadow. The umbra is the darkest part of the shadow, into the penumbral part of the shadow. And it's going to take a little while longer for it to be completely uncovered, but Lafayette, it looks like they've got fantastic skies right now.
Absolutely. I wish it was like that here.
Me too.
And maybe we'll go outside and it'll clear up here in a little bit once we're finished with our broadcast. And so as we continue to talk about just facts and trivia about the moon, and this is a really great opportunity with just literally over 1 million people joining us tonight. A chance to educate people about high-end astronomy and lunar-based content, as well as just some kind of general basic ideas. Once again, a lot of viewers don't have STEM degrees. They may be, they've researched other fields. And so different little facts and trivia might elude them, or they may not have heard that. Like, for example, the same side of the moon always faces Earth, and that's because it's tidally locked. Is there a better way to describe that? We always see the man on the moon, quote unquote?
Yeah, that's right. The moon keeps the same face towards Earth, but it actually is rotating. So if you think about it, when you see the moon and it is full, as it is tonight, you're seeing, here on Earth, we see the same face, but at the moment, that face is pointed towards the sun. When the moon is new, that same face is pointed towards Earth, not towards the sun. So the back side of the moon is, at new moon, pointed towards the sun. So the moon has completed one rotation in 1 month, or 1 month.
I like the 1 month, and what that does is, and I led that question to segue into this, is the fact that even though it might be a great album, there is no real such thing as the dark side of the moon. All aspects, all sides of the moon get sunlight. It just depends on where it is in its rotation around the Earth. But from here, we always see and just assume that the other side might be dark because we don't see it. But that's not the case.
That's not the case.
Right. All aspects of it get the moon, get some sunlight. And so the dark side of the moon is kind of a misnomer, or it's totally a misnomer. We like to refer to it as the near side and the far side.
And the far side.
I think that makes it a little easier for everybody to follow up on. And so it's just little tips and trivia like that. I think these webcasts really help educate a lot of people. I've seen this question as I scroll through, and so it's a great opportunity to answer. As I scroll through NASA's social media, our Twitter account, in which we have our public affairs officer joining us again. Shannon Riddinger is here in the studio, and she's going to give us a social media update for what's happening and how the night has gone. Shannon, I'm sure you guys have been pretty busy back there.
Hey, Chris. Oh, my goodness. Yes, we've been so busy. We've gotten so many great questions, and everyone's been so enthusiastic. And it's just been really a pleasure being able to interact with our social followers and really see the excitement from everyone being able to see this eclipse. And, too, you know, we just want to say we want to thank everyone for bearing with us. We know there's been, you know, some of our feeds have been very, very cloudy, and we know there were network issues, and we've had our loyal followers just stick with us throughout the night, so we really appreciate it. And it looks like the feeds are coming through great now, so we're just glad everybody's been sticking with us all night.
We agree. We're glad also. A lot of great people have said great things about the webcast, because once again, this really reaches people all around the world. And so at One Brother is the Twitter account, and they said that they were very excited for our live feed because their daughter was actually able to see the moon and the eclipse because it was cloudy where they're at. She had no other way to see it. So this kind of content is what we're able to provide. Hanan_A18 said the same thing. He was actually excited that we took the time to reply to his tweet. You know, once again, if we get 1,000 tweets, sometimes it's just that one little reply you give someone that's just enough of a spark. When NASA or a NASA scientist takes the time to reply. And so not only did we reply earlier, but we're giving him a shout out on NASA television. And finally, at Rage_Fire said the same thing. Just thanks that it's cloudy where they're at. They weren't able to see any of the eclipse, and that this live feed, when it worked, was something that they really appreciated.
And let me just make one point.
Absolutely.
I believe the shadow of the Earth's shadow is uncovering Aristarchus crater at the top of the moon, and close to the bottom is Tycho. So there's a very large crater at the bottom of the moon that you can see rays coming away, and that would be Tycho. And above that would be the Mare Nubium, and then on the left of Mare Nubium, Mare Humorum.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Shannon, any other information about social media you'd like to share with us before we go off the air?
Yes, we would. I would really like to give our photo contest on Facebook a shout out. We've already received 1,500 photos, and they have been absolutely gorgeous. So please continue to send your photos in of the eclipse. Also, we want to give a couple shout outs. Chris, as you were saying, we've got so many thank yous, and people have been just so enthusiastic. So at Isadora Caro, at Prosto Space, at Christian Santel, thank you all for your questions. And Chris, if we've got time for one more question from our social folks, I thought this one was really good.
Great.
This one is from at Christian Santel, and he says, is the supermoon an event exclusive to Earth, or do other planets with large moons also have events like this?
Any body that has an orbiting moon, so Jupiter, Saturn, the moons are going to be in orbit, and they're going to have a close approach and a far approach unless the orbits are circularized. So as long as they're elliptical, they will have perigee or a peri-Jupiter, peri-Jove, or ap-Jove. So yeah, that would be a possibility.
Okay.
So,
all right.
And that's a great tie-in if we talk about our journey to Mars. So eventually, at a point in time after the journey to Mars and the Space Launch System rocket takes astronauts to Mars, they can sit on Mars and watch eclipse from Phobos and Deimos.
Well, Phobos and Deimos are pretty small, so they might not see very much.
Hopefully see something. All right, so wonderful. It's been a great night. Mitzi, it's been once again a pleasure to have you join us. And Shannon, it's wonderful to have you here, as well as all our fans, viewers, and friends and family joining us all around the world on behalf of NASA and our production crew and television crew and Dr. James Spann and Lauren Badia and everyone here behind the scenes who's helped make this Ustream and NASA television webcast of the total lunar eclipse a success tonight. We thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you again very soon about more NASA content. Thank you very much, and good night.